Check one, check two. Howdy, 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 everybody. What's going on? Okay, stream is rolling. We are rolling. Let's see here. Text messages out. Gonna get the show started in just a second. Look at this very good artwork. Little canary in the situation room, googly eyes. This might be my favorite Clubhouse artwork so far. All right, let me go like this. Actually, let me show you me. There we go. We're here. Ooh, that green screen is a little rough, huh? I think we can dial in this green screen a little bit. A little funky. Okay, things might get wild here for a second. Don't freak out. Don't freak out. Come on, come on. Why is it so fuzzy? Huh. Something must be wrong with my lighting or something. Come on, baby. All right. Well, let's do this. Is that better? No, that is definitely not better. All right. We'll just live with it. Sorry, it's a little wonky, everybody. All right. We're going to get the show started here in a moment. We're going to give everybody a second to pop in. There we go. We got Caretaker Dan, Cindy over on the YouTube, Guitarman 86, Psalm 40, MSDS on the Rumble, Simple Cody, back in business. Monica's here. Hi, Monica. TC Zubernet says, always nice to hang out here, but yes, you need some dirt under those nails. Do I not have dirt under the nails? I have a problem with dirt under the nails. You know, the thing with having a bunch of animals and baby emus and things like that. Lots of dirt under the nails. But I get it. Normally, you know, podcasting is not necessarily the most rugged of work. I understand. Okay. Here. Who's texting? Who's texting? Okay, somebody's texting. Great. All right, we got the things to address. All right, folks, we'll see how this goes. Yeah, let's just start the show. Let's start the show, see what happens. Okay, you know how this goes. I'm gonna put up this artwork here, and I'm going to play this jingle here, and then we're gonna start the show. All right, here we go, folks. 3, 2, 1, go.
Called it. We got a caller. We got a caller on the line here.
Yo, what's going on, everybody? You're here. You're listening to Canary Cry Clubhouse. I'm your best buddy, Basil. This is great. It's a Thursday. We're having some time to fellowship, chill out, see what's important, monitoring the situation. I'm very proud of today's artwork. I don't know if Guns puts these thumbnails on the podcast version. I don't know if he does. I haven't checked. If he doesn't, maybe he should, for those who are listening to the podcast, because this is, of course, my pride and joy of AI artwork that I've made for the thumbnail. And for those who are just listening, if you can't see it, look, Canary. He's sitting in a hospital bed. He's got his leg up elevated in a cast, but he's got his VR headset on with the googly eyes. And in the background, he's in the situation room, because this is me, okay? I've never identified so directly with a piece of AI artwork. So I thought maybe I would just give you guys insight into what it's like being me. The foot hurts, man. The foot still hurts. It's starting to maybe worry me. I'm not going to use the word worry. I'm not going to do it. Yesterday was officially the 2-week mark since I messed up my foot running around with a baby emu. And while it's better, certainly better, Things are better. It's a lot less acute. But man, last night was tough. It's just a constant aching. And I think, anyway, so I'm not going to go into it too much, but just so you know, that's still happening. Can't see it on screen, but foot's still in the boot, trying to stay off it as much as I can. It was getting much, much better, so much better that I thought, oh, I'll be able to take the boot off soon. This is great. And then the last couple of days have just been horrible. And I think it's probably because when I was feeling better, I was really rocking and rolling out on the compound. I was taking the emu out. I was hobbling along, but he was running. I was feeding all the animals. I was spending time outside. I was moving giant whatchamacallits, moving giant like troughs around for the livestock. And I think that was a bad idea. I think I'm gonna credit all that extra activity with why it hurts so bad. But I mentioned it yesterday on News Talk that officially the last 6 emu eggs have all hatched, a 100% hatching rate on the last clutch of emu eggs. And if you've been following along, you know this, but if you're new to the emu journey, I have these 2 emus. They lay eggs, about 20 eggs a year. This is my 3rd year trying to hatch these eggs. Never been able to do it. And this year, the eggs were split up into 3 groups, right? And I went out, I bought basically as close as can be a professional emu hatching rig, an incubator with a hatcher. I mean, really called in some Christmas and birthday present, favors to get these devices, these big cabinets that hatch the emu eggs. And I put the first batch in there. It was 9 eggs. And mind you, it takes about 60 days for this to happen. So this is like a long process. And the first batch go in, and then that batch gets moved to the hatcher, a separate thing. And then when that batch gets moved to the hatcher, then the new batch goes into the incubator. So you got multiple things going. And that first batch, it was about mid-February. I'm sitting there. Oh, these things are going to hatch. They're going to hatch. Oh, actually, no. Was it February? Don't quote me on the timing. Whenever this first batch, not a single chicken or emu hatched. Not a single one. And remind, this comes after 60 days of meticulously tending to these emu eggs, turning them 3 times a day, checking the humidity, got to keep the humidity right, got to keep the temperature right. And remember, I live off grid. So sometimes the power goes out and, it's a scramble to get everything back up and running. This is a 60-day meticulous attention directed at these eggs. And I thought, surely, I've paid more attention this year than I have in previous years. I have the equipment that I've never had in previous years. This is what's going to do it. And I get through the first batch, 0 hatches in the first 9 eggs. Now, I'm not like too bummed because I've never hatched one before, and this is just a repeat of having never hatched one before. I think I talked about that a couple weeks ago. And I go, okay, all right, something's wrong. Let's find out what's wrong. And in case this didn't occur to you already, to figure out what's going wrong with a batch of emu eggs, the only thing you have to do is to then break open these emu eggs that have been in 96, 97 degree box for 60 days. It is an extremely unpleasant process. You really gotta grit your teeth and be like, I am going to encounter nature in all of its gooiness, in all of its stinkiness, in all of its, and then, part of it is there's little babies in some of these. So it's like kind of sad, you don't like seeing little babies, little dead emu babies. So it's like this very visceral encounter with these emu eggs who are in that position, who came to that state because of me. Okay. And if there's anything that's pretty, I would say, pretty apt comparison to what it's like examining our own relationship with sin. Now, I'm not trying to make too direct of a metaphor between emu eggs and sin, okay? But we get it. For those who've, for those of us who've really worked at it and really wanna, we wanna know what we did wrong, right? And in this case, I want to know what I did wrong with the emu eggs. The other case, a lot of us trying to figure out what exactly has gone wrong in us. What exactly, where are we not measuring up with how we would like things to be developing in us? Looking at our sin, looking at our obviously addictions, looking at our relationships, not just with people, but with money and with the world. And so opening up these emu eggs, each one of them is different, but it's this visceral experience. You really got to bear down and say, okay, this is what I'm going to do. It's going to be nasty, but I need to look in here so I know how to do better next time. Very much like if we're having honest, visceral talks with ourselves or examinations of our own icky, gooey, dead things inside of us. And you start opening these eggs. Oh, this one didn't develop at all. It's just a rotten egg and it smells and it's gooey. Okay. What's this next one? Oh, this one kind of developed a little bit. There's a little embryo thing in there, but the rest is gooey. And oh, why is this one black? I don't know why that one's black. Oh, and then you get to the ones that developed quite a bit. You go, oh, geez, this guy could have made it maybe. And the question is, why didn't he make it? Did he not make it into his air sac? Was he malpositioned? And malpositioning was one of the themes that came through in that first batch of eggs. I'd say maybe 70% of them were developing facing the wrong direction. And there's all sorts of problems that come with that, right? I don't know if I need to enumerate them, but all sorts of problems. So many things go wrong when they're developing facing the wrong direction. And there is a pretty high amount of them facing the wrong direction. I go, what in the world? Why is this? I don't even know. And I'm looking it up and I'm asking AI and I'm going to all the blogs. And mostly what they say is that it's genetic. That's just something wrong with the parents, that the parents just genetically predisposed to their babies being born the wrong way, which is a bummer because there's nothing I can do about that. These are just the genes that we have out on the emu compound. Now, a side note to anybody out there who wants to get any information about emus, I will tell you 90% of emu hatching advice articles are written by AI. 90% of the answers that you get from AI, if you're asking AI, why is this happening to my emus, gets that information from the AI written emu egg hatching articles. Totally useless. Because I was reading these articles, I was using them, and there's weird little things in there. There's little things in there, and I'm like, I don't know, that doesn't seem right. I mean, that's That's what it is for chicken eggs. That's not what it is for emu eggs. Long story short, if anybody's trying to get any information on emu eggs, you can barely trust anything on the internet, and you can't trust the AI, because all the AI did is go, oh, these people want to know about emu eggs. I don't know anything about hatching emu eggs. There's very few resources on the internet about hatching emu eggs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the information available about hatching chicken eggs, and I'm just going to replace the word chicken with emu. And I'm telling you, it's about 90% of the information you can find out there, and there's not a lot of information. But, I'm going through this. I didn't know this in this first batch, all right? But once I see all these malpositioned, I start checking the AI, checking the articles. They all say it's genetic. If your guys are coming out upside down or backwards or whatever, there's really nothing you can do about it. I go, dang. Now, by the time that I'm breaking these open and learning all of this, the next batch of eggs is approaching getting put in the hatcher. They're approaching the last 5 days of hatching, right? So this is all happening very quickly. And so the next batch goes in. And you guys were with me. Nothing happened, stressing me out. Oh no. And a couple of them, and a couple happened in the first batch too, but a couple of them externally picked, meaning they poked their little beak out of the egg so they could breathe. But then they didn't make it. They didn't go any further. They didn't do anything. They just died at the finish line, basically. And of course, when I'm talking to AI, or I'm, again, not even AI, I'm not an AI truster, right? So this isn't even all coming from AI. Again, trying to filter through forums and articles, trying to figure out what it's going to. And so much of it says, hey, once they're in the hatcher, don't touch them. They're in lockdown. Here's a little hint. Lockdown is for chicken eggs, not for emu eggs. But they all say lockdown. Once you put them in there, last 5 days of hatching, don't touch them. Don't even look at them. Don't even breathe near them. Let them do their own thing. And out of that second batch, thankfully, we all got to experience together one out of, I think it was 7 eggs hatched successfully. And this was a huge celebration. Oh my gosh, finally did it. Incredible. It was only one. It was really pretty bad success rate, but it's taken 3 years and we finally got one. Hallelujah, right? Totally excited. And so then, this is great, taking care of that little guy. We're all celebrating. But then I go in and I open up the rest of those eggs that didn't hatch. And the exact same thing. They're all backwards. Most of them are backwards. Some of them had made it so far that they were fully formed, fully taking up every square centimeter of the egg. Like they were there. They were at the finish line. Nothing went wrong. They just didn't or couldn't make it out. But a bunch of them were malpositioned. Again, very high number, malpositioned. Oh, geez. Okay. Maybe it's just a genetic thing. It just must be genetic. This is a huge bummer. We're glad we got one. Now, at this moment, again, staring dead in the face, the gooey, ugly, smelly evidence of my failures. And it is much, again, not trying to get too sermony here, but it does occur to me, these emu eggs, and opening them up, looking at them is a lot like trying to examine our own self, our own sins, these sorts of things, because much like the emu eggs, they're in there. You're taking care of them for 60 days, for 2 months, and you don't know what's going on in there. There's no way of knowing what's going on in there until you break them open. And it's like that sort of with ourselves too, because we're not like digging apart our insides. We're not digging apart our sins. We're not digging apart our emotions. We're not examining things on a regular basis, right? I mean, maybe we should, and maybe some of you do, but I don't. You know, sometimes it'll be a couple months until I go, maybe let's do some self-examination here. And by the time you start doing that self-examination, that secret little thing, that little egg that's been inside you, that you've been tending to in one way or another, again, whether it's habits you're forming, whether it's your feelings you're developing about a person or a situation, or whether it's, a secret little sin, even just like any sort of hatred you're harboring, maybe whatever. And you're kind of just like taking care of it from dealing with it from the outside for months. You have no idea what's going on in there. But then the time comes where you go, nothing's changing. Nothing's changing in these eggs. There's no fruit. These emu eggs are not hatching. I thought they'd be hatching, but they're not hatching. There's no action. There's nothing moving. Similar to, our internal lives. Hey, it's been a couple months and nothing's come of my ambitions. Nothing's come of my feelings about someone or something. Nothing's come. I don't feel more peaceful. I haven't had, the fruit. The fruit is not bearing in my life. And we can all, identify with this. We check in with ourselves every so often and we go, where's the fruit? I thought I would be, even something as simple as like, I thought I'd be better off financially by now. I thought I would be happier by now. I thought I would be more at peace by now. I thought my prayer life would be better by now. I thought my relationship would be better by now. Why is nothing happening? Why is no fruit coming of any of these things? And it's not until you break them open and look at them that you've obviously been doing something wrong. Even if you're trying as hard as you can to do the right thing, even if you're trying to do, foster these things inside you, even if you're trying to hatch the emu egg and you're getting all your information coincidentally from AI or articles online or, where you're getting your instructions for these things is extremely important. And in Sunday school, this would obviously be where I make the point that if we're trying to hatch these little eggs inside of us, these ambitions, these goals, the fruit of our lives, the fruit of the Spirit, if we're trying to hatch those things, we cannot get the instructions from AI. We cannot get the instructions from the internet. But of course, everybody say it with me. We can get those instructions from the Bible, the Bible. Yes, that's the book for me, which I think is a magnificent truth, but also metaphor for what I did next. Because after that second batch, so grateful, I had one little guy. And if I only got that one little guy from that second clutch, I would have been happy. But I was so frustrated that I decided I must have some bad information. I need to find better information. So what I did was I went searching for a physical book. That's right, a physical book who has an author that I can look up the author. I can, they have something at stake here. The author's reputation is at stake for having good or bad information. And of course, preferably an author who I know has experience with emus. Now, little heads up, if you go on Amazon right now and you search for emu handbook, emu hatching guide, emu thing, any of this, right? You'll get about a dozen books that come up, which is really suspicious because it doesn't seem like the market would require a dozen books on raising emus. There are not a whole lot of emus. There are not a whole lot of people with emus. There's no real industry to speak of to require a dozen handbooks in how to hatch emus. But I go, okay, I got to find some good information. So let's look at the details. When did the book come out? Who's the author? And I start looking. And 11 out of the 12 emu hatching handbooks were published on Amazon in the past 2 years, which is kind of suspicious. Is there not the last 2 years, 11 emu handbooks from, I guess it was, 2023 to 2026 or 2025. And there was maybe one that was in 2022, but all extremely recent. And because I am who I am, I have the skills that I have, and I have the attention that we have all been developing on this show and other shows for a long time. I go, that's a little strange that 99% of these emu handbooks were published after artificial intelligence was made available to people. I go, not going to happen. Not going to trust any emu handbook that has been published, especially self-published, after 2021. And I'm telling you, there is one book, one emu handbook. Maybe I should pull it up. Let me do this so I can show you guys. I forget the guy's name. So partially, I want to give this guy the credit. Let me go like this. This one, here it is. Let me show you this screen. Share screen. Emu Farmer's Handbook. Here it is. Up on the screen. Booyah. Get on up there, screen. There it is. Look at it. The Emu Farmer's Handbook by the Minnaars. Minnaar. This Emu Farmer's Handbook was published, this version we're looking at here was published in 1993. Now, if you're an emu person, you know one interesting detail about emus in America, and that is that domesticated emus were brought to America in 1993. Booyah, baby. The Emu Farmer's Handbook from the Minnaar family. This has to be it. This has to be legit. This has to be maybe the only legit Emu Farmer's Handbook in existence. Now, those of you who can see the screen, you maybe have noticed one concerning detail about this book and its listing on Amazon. Do you see it now? buy used for $163. $163 for the only legit emu handbook. The only one that I can trust. Now, I'm happy to report that back when I bought this book, it was not $163. It was about $60. So thankfully I got it for $60. The fact that Amazon has it priced so highly now, it's possible that I owned one of the last living versions of this book. And so there we go. The Emu Bible arrives at my house. And I start reading it. I start flipping through the pages, specifically to the incubating and the hatching thing. And I'm reading it, and most of it is stuff that kind of already knew. A lot of the details. The thing is, it's also in 1993, and so there's like equations. There are some Australian was so committed to his scientific study of emus that he wrote equations for eggs and like how to tell if the egg, how fast it's losing weight and the size and the width, and you put it through this guy's equation and it tells you when it should hatch or when it's behind. It's incredible, right? I almost want to make an app. Maybe if I get my relationship with AI fixed a little bit, I can have Claude make me an emu farming app, maybe emu incubating app. And I could like put in all these equations so people can just do it. Because doing the equations, it's too much. I'm not a math person. I'm much less an algebra person. But it's very, very thorough. And there was one thing in particular that I noticed a difference in my process. Again, the process of incubating, you're talking humidity, you're talking timing, you're talking turning, you're talking temperature. And there was one more thing that I had not considered, because the forums, the articles, even the articles that I found that I don't believe were AI, but of course the AI articles and AI, they all told me one thing. And even the manual in the incubator that I ordered said this: when you place the eggs in the incubator, you place them vertically, where the small end is on the bottom and the big end of the egg is on the top, because the big end is where the air pocket develops. And so you want it on the top because that's... Now, in the Emu Bible, in the Emu Handbook that I had searched out, spent a lot of money on, had been let down by all other sources of information. Again, in case you're missing the metaphor, like the Bible, it has one little section. Now, it's interesting. This was in 1993. This was the year emus came to America. And so it has a lot of stuff in here. In the book, it says a lot of like, it'll tell you a fact, and then it'll say, but more research is needed to tell if this is a big deal. Or it'll say, assisting an emu to hatch. Some emu farmers have found that it makes them too weak and that you shouldn't help them hatch. But more experience is needed because the industry is so young. So it's very honest about that. Like, it tells you the best information they had at the time from an actual experienced emu farmer who I'm sure had lots of emu farmer friends. And there was one little part in there that said, some emu farmers put the eggs vertically in their hatcher, though the only reason to do this is if you need to save space in the hatcher for economic reasons. So from the mouths of our emu farmer ancestors, they say, some of us put them in vertically, but we only put them in vertically if we have like 1 million eggs and we need to fit them all into the incubator. It then says, some emu farmers say that this contributes to malpositioning. If you're ever in question about how to position the emu eggs, remember, in nature, the emu eggs are on their side, which is just pure common sense. If you had to guess how to successfully hatch something, your first instinct should be, I do it in the way that nature does it. But because I was not listening to that still small voice that said, do it how nature does it, and instead I was getting bad information from the technological demon that is AI, or the informational cesspit that is the internet, I did not pay attention to that still small voice, common sense. And so, for the last clutch of emu eggs, I go, okay, I'm going to hatch them on their side. We'll give it a go. We'll put them on their side. At this time, I'm under the impression that it's genetic, right? I'm under the impression that there's nothing I can do about it and that all the eggs are going to be malpositioned and it's all going to be horrible. Similarly, how the emu eggs in our soul, when they keep going wrong, when they don't hatch, when they don't bear fruit, when you examine them and they are stinky and dead and scary and gross. And we think, why is it like this? Is it just genetic? Am I so stinky and dirty and wrong and dead inside? Are my ambitions, are my relationships, are my developments, are my emotions, are my hopes, dreams that I'm trying to incubate inside of me, when they don't come to fruition and I crack them open and they're dead and stinky and horrible? Does AI or the internet or bad places of information say it's just genetic? You're going to keep failing. Your eggs are going to keep dying. Your ambitions, your hopes, your relationships, your virtues, it's just going to keep happening. But turns out that even if these things can be genetic, if you go to the better, direct source of information about these things, which often happens to be filled with common sense. I mean, that's the funny thing about the Bible. You know, you're reading through the Bible, you know, if it's making prescriptions or whatever, it's telling you what, most of what's in the Bible, most of the instruction, most of what we have to learn in the Bible is pretty common sense. And it's common sense because if we have Christ within us, that is our sense. Within the body of believers, our common sense is reflected. in what's written in the Bible, because the same author of that book is also the author of our salvation. So it just makes sense. It's not complicated. So much of what's going on in the Bible is not complicated. And I'll tell you what, even though the Emu Farmer's Handbook, remember, it was very like lightly phrased. I phrased it to you in the way that it appeared, maybe not word for word, but for paraphrased, was some emu farmers do this, but they do this for economic reasons. You know, that was the thing. Like they do it for money, basically. But if you ever have a question about how to lay the emu eggs, use common sense. The way that you know the answer is within you. God has put the answer in you. Put the eggs on their side. So I went ahead and did that. This last batch, there were 6 eggs. I incubated them on their side. I did nothing else different because, of course, I was doing everything right the first time, with the exception of the positioning. And as of, As of the 7th, as of April 7th, all 6 of those eggs hatched into baby emus who are all currently alive. 100% hatch rate. That is higher than even the Emu Farmer Handbook says it should be. 100%. So I'm very happy about that. Oh, I brought you guys a picture. Let me show you. This is a new picture of 2 of the emus. This is who's this? This is number 1 and 2. 2 hatched first. He's the one in the back with the mohawk. That's number 1. He hatched the day before Easter. Number 1 here is in the foreground. He hatched, I think, the day after Easter on Monday. I could not get more than 2 in one picture, mostly because they're not all in the same brooder yet. When I get them all in the same brooder, you better believe we're going to have videos and pictures of half a dozen of these little suckers being cute. And to be honest, at this point, this makes 7 total baby emus because I had the one that hatched in the clutch before. 7 baby emus might be too many emus. I don't think I can. I mean, now I got to figure out what to do about 7 baby emus. I'm definitely going to keep at least the first one. And I don't know. I don't know what to do. Of course, I could try to sell them. I can try to trade them with other emu farmers to get new, genes into the gene pool, because we don't want all these babies, making eggs with each other. Then there might really be something genetic might cause a problem in the future. But I don't know. It's too early to tell. We're only a couple days in. And it strikes me, like so many problems I have in the physical realm, whether it's my foot or my tooth or my emus or whatever, there's always something spiritually reflected in these problems. And oftentimes, I'm not even saying that I'm like some great theologian who can decode the physical realm into its spiritual parts or whatever. The funny part is, and the part that we should all take away, is that so often it's just common sense. It's Christ sense. It's the common sense. If you have the mind of Christ, if you're seeking Christ, if you're aligning yourself with Christ, Your common sense will be different from others' common sense. That's why common sense isn't necessarily the best word for it. But it's funny because it's quite obvious. And look, not to get into a big philosophical, theological debate with some whoever who wants it. Look, not debating. I'm just saying the common sense of the world, the common sense of an unbeliever, where does their common sense come from? Comes from culture, comes from society, comes from technology, comes from the internet, comes from, scarily enough, AI, although, not even just AI is just a manifestation of the collection of of human knowledge and reasoning, aka the world. So you have two choices in this life. You can align yourself with the common sense of the world, which we've all seen and known and felt and experienced. How many times our incubation is fruitless when we get our information from the bad place? But the handbook does exist, folks. The B.I.B.I.B.I.B.L.E. Basic instructions before leaving Earth. Which is very corny. It's a classic pastor's joke. Come on. Classic pastor's joke. B.I.B.L.E. Basic instructions before leaving Earth. Which a lot of theologians will say basic instructions before leaving Earth is a horrible way to think about the Bible. And I'd probably agree with them if we got into sort of an academic discussion. But this isn't about that. It's about common sense, Christ's sense. And I'll share with you this, and many of you have probably witnessed this here on this show, maybe on a different show, maybe on Ravel, maybe on the Joyspiracy Theory, maybe News Talk. We've all witnessed this in real life, and I imagine many of you have witnessed me experience this live on the air. And that is sometimes the problems that someone is having are experienced as very complicated. Are wrestling with our sin, are wrestling with our faith, are wrestling, the spiritual life, the experience of it to each and every one of us feels very complicated and feels very dire and feels like we need answers. We don't have access to answers. Nothing's working. It's a battle. That's why I call it spiritual battle. Your own experience, these little things. They can paralyze us. They can go on for years and years and years while we think that we're trying to solve this spiritual problem. But there's something funny that happens when you bring that to someone else, or when when someone brings those problems to you. Because at their core, there's some very common, Christ-like common sense that can solve all of these situations in our life, that can change the way what we're incubating can bear fruit, to pay attention to it, to change where we're getting the information, not aligning ourselves with the common sense of the world, but with the common sense of Christ and the Bible and believers. And we see it time and again, people struggling with things. And the good news, and this is good news, I want everybody to hear me here, and this should be encouragement for anybody. This is why we are encouraged to confess our sins, not just to God, but to the brethren. This is why we're encouraged to fellowship, to bring our problems and our struggles to fellow believers. Because when two or more are present, there Christ is also. So when you're alone trying to solve your problems, and we'll talk specifically about spiritual problems, problems of faith, problems of sin, things like that. When you're alone, you can't generate your own answers. And you're probably, if it's ongoing, you're probably getting your information from a bad place. But when two or more are gathered, when we bring our problems of faith, our problems of sin to another believer, then that's when that common sense, somebody can see the problem you're having, they can bear witness to it. And usually, what will be the case is that there's some pretty common sense solutions. Now, as I named the episode a while back, it can be it can be simple, but not easy, right? Doing what we're supposed to do, what the Bible and God and Christ prescribe us to do to successfully live our spiritual life here on earth until the sweet by and by, it's all quite easy. Sorry, I keep saying that wrong. It's all quite simple. Pray every day as often as you can. Love God, love others as yourself, turn from sin, turn towards virtue. These are all very basic common sense things. But it doesn't mean it's easy. But when we can exchange, when we bring our problems and our sins to a brethren or a sisterin that we trust and are of like mind, of like Christ mind, the answers tend to be very simple, even if not easy. And that's where we are to bear them with one another. And we've seen it dozens of times, right? Now, that doesn't mean the problem's instantly fixed, because then you got to do the thing. You have a new batch. If you just had a batch of spiritual emu eggs crack open and they're all dead and stinky and horrible, and you find the information. What do I do next? Why is this happening? Is it just me? Are the answers even out there? And you get that information. You go, oh, that's what I did wrong. Thank you, good source of information. Thank you, fellow brother in Christ. That's what I did wrong. Your next batch of emu eggs is not going to hatch the next day. Your problems, your ambitions, your hopes, your dreams, your relationships, all those things, once you have the answer, they're not solved the next day. You got to put a new batch in there, lay them on the side, your new information. You got to do a new batch with your new information, and you got to do everything again. You got to do everything right every day for 60 days. And after 60 days, you might just have 100% hatch rate on those things, but it doesn't happen overnight. It's excruciating. I mean, funny enough, let's just say I wanted a better habit, right? And let's say my spiritual emu egg is like my prayer life, right? And I go through, an incubation period, and I crack open the egg that is my prayer life, and it's stinky and it's bad. I go, what the heck? I thought I was doing everything right. Then I go to the Bible. Maybe I go to a brother in Christ and I say, look, this is wrong. I messed this up. I'm not seeing the fruit that I want. And I thought I had it all right. And then between the two of you, Christ's common sense, the Bible, everything. You go, oh, it seems, maybe try this. This one little part here, it seemed, I don't know about that part, I don't know if you needed to pray uh, hanging upside down in your closet. I feel like the thing where you hang yourself upside down in your closet when you want to pray, I feel like that might be wrong. Like that might be kind of maybe a distraction. I don't know where you thought you needed to do that. I don't think you need to do that. So why don't you just pray right side up in a chair? Well, funny enough, if you want to build a habit successfully, you want to build a practice successfully, you got to do it for 2 months. Start again. You got a new little emu egg, and you got to do it right, and you got to do it every day, and you got to do it for a long time. And that's what throws a lot of people off. Of course, the obvious thing, because we all want to solve our problems now. We want instant gratification. We've been told or sold that simply having the knowledge of how to do something is as good as doing the thing. This is, of course, just the issue with our society today, with the expectations of, the sort of American culture, global culture, I'd even say, through technology or through, it's like buying the self-help book without reading it, just because you bought the book, it doesn't mean things are going to go good. So once you decide, oh, okay, I see. If I want my prayer life to bear fruit, I shouldn't, maybe I shouldn't be doing it hanging upside of my closet. I can just do it in a chair. And then you gotta do it. You gotta do it for 60 days, for a long time. Honestly, I don't know if there's a direct correlation between the incubation time of an emu egg and building a good habit, but I can pretty much guarantee you, if you are intentional and purposeful about practicing something, working towards some goal, and you do it every day for 60 days, you're probably going to do it. You're probably going to see fruit. I would almost guarantee, unless something just is going horribly wrong. And if something's going horribly wrong, maybe you had bad information. You got to try something else out. You got to do it again. All right. Well, I think the Lord had something to say there. I think that's not bad. That's great. It builds my faith when I come and sit down and do this show and I have no idea what's going to happen or what to say or what to do. And thankfully, through His power and not my own, maybe some good point was made in there. So, just a heads up, in case you don't know, this is a call-in show. We're already an hour in. So, look, I'm not going to force anybody to call in. I recommend somebody calls in. If you got something to talk about, even if you just want to say hi, nothing, whatever. I am not afraid to shut the show down early so I can get back horizontal in my bed with the foot up in the air. But would like, if anybody's out there inspired, if anybody has anything going on, if they've got boots on the ground, if they just want to say hi, we'll take a couple times. We'll take some time, take a couple callers or two if they call in. It's funny because sometimes I just assume that people will just call in because it's a call-in show. But I noticed I did not give the pitch to call in at the beginning of the show, and nobody did. So I guess this was a good experiment. I need to continue to pitch the call-in show at the beginning of the show. So you'll see wherever you're watching this, Rumble. Unfortunately, maybe X doesn't have the call-in link. Does it? Does X have the call-in link? If you want to call in, I recommend you do call in. And all you got to do is click on that link in the description of the video on Rumble or YouTube. If you can't click on it, then you can copy and paste it into your browser. It'll ask you a couple questions. It'll put you into the back room where you can watch and listen to the show. Until it's time, I'll bring you up on stage. So there you go. There's the pitch. I want to give a shout out real quick because we also have, we got a couple callers coming in. That's good. Big shout out real quick to everybody on the Canary Cry text message alert system. If you are not on the Canary Cry text message alert system, you should be on the Canary Cry text message alert system. In fact, the Canary Cry text message alert system is the only place that I put out a notification for Clubhouse. I don't send an email. I don't do a social post. I only send the text message for this show. So it's a great way to get notified when the show's going live. So you don't miss a show unless you want to. Fun part is you can text us back at that number. I cannot carry on a conversation with you. It's very expensive, but I do see the texts and sometimes I read them on the show. So there you go. Text the word Canary to 877-740-3226. One more again. That's the word Canary to 877-740-3226. Let's see here. 281 says, have a great show, my dude. Thank you very much. 832. Okay. Let me see if I have something here. Oh, I don't know if I have it on this jingle board. Oh no, come on, baby. Where are you? Oh, I don't know if it's here. Okay, just gonna have to wing it. I'm just gonna have to wing it then. Well, 832 text and says, best birthday gift ever. A live Clubhouse. Let's go. Bless the Canarium. Well, happy birthday, 832. Thanks for being here. If you're here live, appreciate you letting me know it's your birthday. Apologies. Apparently, I don't have the birthday jingle on this particular jingle board. So instead, what should I play? What is this one? I'll play this one. Oh, that's a full song. I think that's a full song from.
You must conserve your special human bodily fluids.
What is that one? Why is that one in here? Okay. All right. Apology. We have so many jingles that people have made over the years that we don't hear very often. There you go. There's your birthday advice, 832. Thank you for the text. Happy birthday. Let's see here. When did this one come in? This was yesterday. 856 texts and says Proverbs 30 verse 4. Who has ascended to heaven and come down? Who has gathered the wind in his fists? Who has wrapped up the waters in a garment? Who has established all of the ends of the earth? What is his name and what is his son's name? Surely you know. Wow, that's a pretty cool one. Proverbs 30 verse 4. That's hardcore. That's like metal. What is his name? And what is his son's name? Surely you know. Yeah, interesting. As you see, of course, we see many fulfillments of the Old Testament in the New Testament. We see Jesus prophesied in the Old Testament being fulfilled in the New Testament, of course. But by an Old Testament perspective, that's a very interesting line. You know, who created the universe? What is his name? And what is his son's name? Of course, an Old Testament reference to Jesus later on. Very cool. Thank you, 856, heavy duty. 859 says, I just got a biblically accurate Basil sticker and I'm loving it. Thank you very much, 859, for shouting out the biblically accurate Basil sticker, which came in the supply drop. It was a great one. Okay, so there you go. You can text the word Canary to 877-740-3226. Send a little thing. Okay, we got some callers hanging out here. As usual, I will be running a 10-minute timer in the background, and it's not a hard limit. Don't worry, you're not going to get the hook or kicked off the stage at 10 minutes, but it's just the way for us to keep track of time and make sure that we can talk to all the people we should talk to. All right, we're going to start out with our caller number one. It's Shield Maiden for Christ. Shield Maiden for Christ. Let's bring her up on stage. Hello there, Shield Maiden for Christ. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Hanging in there, doing the thing. Now, your name here says Shield Maiden for Christ, and your title underneath says Middle East Christians.
Yes. So I just wanted to bring up something that has been kind of, it depends on where on the internet people are,
Uh-huh.
but I feel like there's an awful lot of people who have not really taken into consideration that what's happening in Iran in particular, whether or not any given leader is making a good or right choice, could very well lead to the Christians of Iran, for instance, all being able to have their own Bible, which is not the case right now.
Interesting.
And
So you mean the operation in Iran, people might not be thinking about how it might bring some benefit to the Christians, or that the Christians
yes,
are in danger?
very much so, because
Yeah.
the church in Iran for the last quite a few years has been the fastest growing church in the world,
I didn't know
but
that.
it's extremely illegal under the IRGC.
I think
So,
that makes sense. That makes
like,
sense
it's
in a
I
Muslim
support
theocracy.
I support a missionary organization called Back to Jerusalem, and they received a request from the underground church in Iran either in December or like for this year, wanting 500,000 Bibles to be delivered in 2026.
Wow.
So, and that all has to be smuggled in unless the IRGC falls and they have the freedom to transport non-Islamic religious material into the country freely.
Yeah, that's
So
interesting.
what I'm thinking is, I'm not saying that I think that Donald Trump is making one amazing decision after another necessarily, or that Netanyahu is, or anybody else in the decision-making sphere. It's just there's people out there that right now are so angry about their personal perspective on
Yeah.
world events or the government's choices that it's like they can't even see that maybe some idiots in government are just being used by God to answer the decades long prayers and cries of his people who've been suffering, who've lost loved ones for coming to Christ and getting caught and all that stuff. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
That
because
That's great. I mean, amen. What a perspective. And it's so funny. Again, talk about sort of like common sense or Christ common sense. That is such a like Christ like common sense thing that I can't believe I have not heard more. I can't believe I didn't think about it. I can't, I didn't even consider that. But we know, again, we can all have our feelings about Trump and what he's doing in the Middle East. It is a classic thing for God to use even an evil ruler to benefit his people in any place, in any certain time, in any certain place, right? I mean, even if Trump is the Antichrist, is evil, is going against anything he should do in Iran, even so, the Bible shows us time and time again that the actions of an evil ruler or a foolish ruler or whatever is used directly to benefit God's people in unexpected ways. And that's the whole point. Unexpected is like that's like the main thing, right? That's what separates logical, human-based reasoning for actions and God's plan. Because God's plan is so far outside of our limited scope of cause and effect, or even to be able to hold so many different whatever perspectives and facts in one thing. If it is the case, and you know, Trump has repeatedly called out the persecution of Christians around the world in different places, Nigeria, South Africa. I don't know if he's necessarily called it out in Iran, but these various places, he has publicly called out the persecution of Christians. Not to say that not even making the assumption that that's like really where his heart's at least for like political reasons. It was beneficial for him to call attention to it. I don't think I've heard him call attention to that in Iran. But you're absolutely right. Even in the chaos of what might be going on, it could be opening up windows for smuggling Bibles in or something. The government's basically destroyed. It's working in like separate splinter cells. Everybody's got a lot on their mind, trying not to get blown up, trying to blow up other things. If I don't know what exactly it looks like, but if the obstacles for Christians in Iran to be getting Bibles and worshiping freely are like, guards at the border or soldiers who don't have enough to do, so they search trucks or something, or in peacetime the military has a lot of extra energy and a lot of extra time to sort of enforce things like banning Christianity. So even if there's no like official strategy for Trump to get Bibles into Iran, just the chaos that can be caused by a king going crazy, keeping the military, keeping the police, keeping the government, their attention on more important things might be opening up sort of divine windows for organizations or people or whatever to be able to get Bibles in there to their Christians, so that, I mean, goodness gracious, a Christian can own their own Bible. What a crazy idea. Did I lose you?
No.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for bringing that. I was looking here, just a quick cursory search on DuckDuckGo. It says there is an estimated 300,000 to a million Christians in Iran. Obviously, would be a difficult number to get if so many of them are in hiding, I guess.
Well, Eugene Bach from Back to Jerusalem thinks that it could be closer to 5 million at this point because of that reason that we and the fact that they need 500,000 Bibles just this year.
Yeah, good point.
And that there's no way to take a survey.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. And also, yes, of course, the institutions, Wikipedia, the powers of this world would, if they don't have a sort of evil incentive to lie about the amount of Christians in Iran, they at least have a passive incentive to not necessarily try to count higher than whatever number they had before, like actually tracking, which would be very difficult to do, obviously. Yeah, I mean, in amongst this chaos, amongst all of our feelings about this, I'm sure that God is doing incredible things over there in Iran, and the I guess attention of the military being elsewhere is probably opening up opportunities for God to do amazing things. Not to say that, if a Christian in Iran loses a loved one or gets bombed or something, that's always also very sad. But that's what it's like, you know, aligning ourselves and worshiping the creator of the universe who's bigger than we could possibly imagine.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Thank you very much. No, thank you for bringing that. I was trying to think, is there a direction you would point anybody if they wanted to learn more about this, or I don't know, get
Well,
involved?
I support Back to Jerusalem,
Mm-hmm.
which is a mission organization, and they support primarily Chinese missionaries
Yeah.
who are coming from the Chinese house church. Apparently, not a lot of people know that the Chinese Christians have a goal to send tens of thousands of missionaries into the 1040 window. And in
Yeah.
many cases, a Chinese citizen can get a visa for things like business, where in places where somebody from a Western country would be denied on the grounds of being from a Western country.
Right.
So, yeah, they have more access to the remaining unreached people groups in the world than Western people of any Western area. So
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
would be they have a website that puts out a short to medium article like every day, just on a topic relating to the missions and stuff. So
Okay. It's
you
this
can,
Back to Jerusalem organization. People can find it.
yes.
Search for that. All right. Well, goodness gracious. God bless you, Shield Maiden for Christ. Thank you for bringing that. There are times I don't know if ashamed would be the right word I would use, but I can't believe that had not really crossed my mind. So thank you very much for that. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there too who are happy to have this occur to them.
Okay.
Okay. God bless
Bye.
you. Talk to you again. Call again soon. Bye. Yeah, I just did a quick search if Christianity is illegal in Iran. And it says Christianity is not illegal in Iran, but it is heavily restricted. Okay. Some of us would call that illegal, but okay. Only certain ethnic Christian groups, like Armenians and Assyrians, are allowed to practice their faith openly, while converts from Islam face severe persecution and legal consequences. Yeah, crazy. So they can technically say, oh, no, it's not illegal, but to restrict the religion to ethnic groups, that'd be like saying, only black people in America can be Christian. And if you're not black, then you get the whip or something. I'm sure it's even worse than that, the way that they handle their business over there. That's wild. That is severe persecution. You have to be a certain ethnic group to be a Christian, which means that ethnic group, of course, can't openly invite people to find Christ. And even more so, if you're not in those ethnic groups, you're probably Muslim or in a Muslim family. And so a conversion from Islam to Christianity, severely punishable. Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy. All right, God. Be with the Iranian Christians for us, please. Okay, we got another caller on the line. It is the one, the only one, Lousy Petunia. How are you, Petunia?
Hey Basil, I'm good.
Are you there?
How are you?
Can you hear me? Good. It sounds like perhaps I'm getting the audio from very far away.
Can you hear me now?
Perhaps a little bit better. Is your phone are we on speakerphone or something? Is that the
No, I'm just using headphones.
Oh, you know what I think? I think that it's not like the microphone on your headphones isn't connected.
I know what it is. I'm sorry.
She
It
knows what it
was
is.
yeah. Can you hear it now? Is that better?
Yep, that's much better. Yeah,
Sorry about that.
that's
Well,
okay.
I
I
just
can
love
hear
that
very much
call.
better now.
I was so glad to hear from Shield Maiden for Christ. I ran into her in the wild on X, and she makes a really good point. Depending on where you spend time online would depend on whether or not you have considered that, because there are a lot of people on Twitter or X that are talking about the Christian church in Iran. And so I love that call, and I'm so glad that she was faithful to call in and make that point. And we know
Yeah.
that it's
Yeah.
true that the Lord uses wicked men to bring about his will. That's even prophecy in the Bible for the man of lawlessness and how that will go down.
Yeah.
Jesus chose Judas and knew that he would betray him, and so we know that God works that way. And
Yeah.
but yeah, and not to say those things like she said in a way to try to justify any or whatever, but I just having the eternal perspective, I love how she brought it back pointing to the Lord. And so yeah, I didn't really have anything to call specifically about. I just wanted to say hello and um, just thank you for your faithfulness to pray when it's time. Like even just now, you quickly just said, Lord, be with the body in Iran. Amen. I just wanted to say hello, really. That's it.
Amen. Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah. It's really true. Again, yeah, not to justify any bad behavior by anybody, any violence or anything, but that's what makes aligning ourselves with Christ and God sort of the escape hatch from the prison of our own feelings, from the prison of our own logic. It really is this, it's this pathway, this escape hatch out of, being so, I guess, certain of our own reasoning and of our own limited scope of what's going on in the world. And, a lot of people, get sort of anxious or irritated or mad at Christians for having this little escape hatch out of the sort of worldly assumptions, the worldly logic. That is one of the reasons why peace abounds or should be abounding in a believer's life. So, I agree. I totally agree. So, thank you very much, One
Yeah, I
Liza.
mean, Paul himself says,
Oh, no, continue.
yeah, sorry. No, you go ahead.
No, I wasn't gonna say anything. I was just gonna, make sure you understood that I'm very grateful that you're here, but no, you go. What did Paul say?
I was just going to say that he just talks about being content in chains, or and yeah, I feel like that call just really put things into proper perspective.
Yeah, yeah,
But
amen.
yeah,
I agree. I agree, Petunia. God bless you. Thank you so much for calling in, and, I invite you to call in again. It was great talking to you.
all right. Bless you too, Basil.
You bet. Bye-bye. Yeah, Shield Maiden for Christ, bringing the heat. Thank you very much, One Lazy Petunia. I can't recall if she's called in before or not, but I see her in the chat all the time. And it's so funny because I get maybe, I don't know if you guys are like this, but I often, when I'm having a conversation or I'm reading something or saying something or whatever, or even just thinking about something, I'll think about it, say it from my, think about it from my perspective, of course. I'll think about it from the perspective of the listener, of course. I just want to be mindful of, any blind spots or anything. But I also would think about it from the perspective of a non-Christian. And some non-Christians are fine. Some they're all beautiful God's children, but But really, I'll be like, what would a really somebody angry at God, or someone who even just by default is like thinks Christianity is a problem, just kind of the default, oh, organized religion is so illogical, this sort of basic atheist kindergarten class, and I'm trying to think of how, and it's really, really difficult. And it's one thing that is, I feel like, a really foundational hurdle, because the logos, we've been saying this recently, logos, not logic, logos, the spirit that is the logic of the universe, the underwritten code that sustains everything. God is as the ground of being, the very thing, the very guy that allows existence to exist. That's kind of the basis on kind of Christian logic, right? Christian logic admitting that we're flawed inherently, which non-Christians hate, admitting that logic is not enough to understand the logos of the universe, human logic, uh, the perception of not just our eyes and our ears, but our minds does not go out far enough to explain the logos, the underlying hidden logic of the universe that often is offensive to human logic, right? Like, even if there was a non-Christian person, I won't even say non-Christian, atheist, like fedora wearing atheist type, right? And we say, yeah, goodness, we're just, we don't want to justify the violence, but thank God if this chaos is allowing for God's people in Iran, for the persecuted Christians in Iran to take a breath and to receive the Bibles that are so important to them. And the logic of the fedora atheist would say, oh, what? So you want children to get bombed just so people can have Bibles? Is that really worth it? People dying so Bibles, so a book written by drunk ancient people can get into the country? That doesn't make a lot of sense. Really? And of course, if you want to work by the logic of the world, you could say, yeah, well, people are being killed for Bibles all over the world. But it's the logos. The logic will cause you to grow a neckbeard and wear a fedora and be eternally angry at things that you're not smart enough to know that you don't know. Keeps you trapped in the limits of your perception, believing that the perception of your eyes, your ears, and your mind is big and broad enough that you know what's good and bad and morals and the ethics and all these things. And we all know where the atheist morals and ethics get us. It's all sorts of horrible things, the genocide of babies, the disgusting mutilation of children, that's all this, like, that's this where the atheist logic gets you. And they love sort of praising this logic of theirs. They worship it because, of course, this sort of number one temptation that we are gods, we can be as gods. And the first step to going down the black hole of believing that you are God or you are as God. The first step is that is believing that your perception and your logic extends the farthest out that reality goes. Because you're claiming omniscience. You're claiming that all there is to know, you know. Thankfully, more and more people are kind of coming to the conclusion that ardent atheism is for middle schoolers, and making that sort of connection there. It's middle school logic. Thankfully, there's been a little bit of a revival. Again, if not strictly in salvation sense, at least in sort of the understanding, acceptance, and I guess intellectual space for Christendom to come in, and for logos to come into the broader conversation. All right, sorry, just rambling now. Okay, we got another caller on the call here. This is Liquid Bacons. Liquid Bacons, how are you? Welcome to the show.
Hey, buddy. I'm doing pretty good. God bless you, man. I appreciated your work for years and years.
Wow, thank you so much, buddy. Appreciate hearing that. Is this the first time that you've called in?
Yeah. I think I left a message for you and Gon's couple hundred episodes ago, like leaving a message and all that. I think I was trying to ask you how do rockets work in space and everything like that, but you guys never aired the question. But but anyways, I remember you guys were covering on one of your episodes about the GATE program, and I just wanted to pick your brain on if you had went down that rabbit hole a little more and got any new information, because I think you said that you were a part of it. I also was a part of it too, and then lo and behold, I think like 30 years later, I'm having like repressed memories, and so those aren't fun. And but I didn't know if you looked into it any further, got any more information, where you stood on some of that.
Yeah, to be honest, no. It has not been a rabbit hole that I've continued to go down, but something occurs to me right now, and it's kind of related to the most recent Canary Cry radio episode with Vicki Joy Anderson.
Okay.
Because on that Canary Cry radio episode, I got to kind of catalog in sequence to Vicki Joy Anderson, like my lifetime of supernatural experiences, from sleep paralysis to shadow people to all sorts of crazy stuff. Right? I've mentioned these things over the years on the show, of course, but on that episode with her, and she talks a lot about. So she works with people who are having these things, like not quite necessarily exorcism, but people with sleep paralysis, people with these kind of weird things that are happening over and over. And she says, they often are sort of lifetime things. They'll start as your child and they'll keep going until you can be like, 40, 50, like some people, they never stop. And she said, often it can be because of some sort of childhood event, some sort of childhood trauma, right?
Yeah.
And I told her in the episode, well, it's funny because I don't really recall any childhood trauma. I don't even really have any inkling of the trauma. To me, these sleep paralysis things, or things floating across the room, or these hauntings or whatever, those were the trauma. Like if I have to think of any childhood trauma, that was the childhood trauma. And of course, I think everybody should listen to that episode if you haven't. But of course, my story ends with
Which one is it? It's the
uh,
most recent, you said, right?
most recent Canary Cry radio episode. I believe we did post it on the News Talk feed as well, so you can kind of find it wherever. But Vicky Joy Anderson.
Nice.
And of course, I got to sort of tell my story of victory in my 20s about ending it for good and the whole thing. But
Nice.
I'm making this kind of little connection right now from what you say, knowing what we know about the GATE program, or, maybe knowing is not quite right, but the evidence being presented for the GATE program as some government or CIA program to try to detect uh, what they would call gifted children, but children
Yeah.
who might, be recruitable to psychic programs or whatever. I don't even know exactly, but some devious sort of spiritual or paranormal government programs, right? I Now the funny thing is, I was in GATE for a little bit, but the funny thing was, I don't think I was actually chosen. Because how did it happen? I'm trying to remember. I can't remember if we like all took a test or something,
Yeah,
or
that's usually how they
right.
filter. Yeah.
So the weird thing about my GATE program thing was that I didn't actually pass the GATE test, but I was put into GATE later, I think because of the recommendation of a teacher. Like
Yeah.
I did not earn my place in the GATE program. I was sort of placed there afterwards. And I remember it being kind of like, this thing of where I suddenly showed up. The kids had done a couple meetings and tests already. And then I kind of showed up out of nowhere. And there was a little bit of like, why are you here? Like, you didn't pass the test or whatever. So,
Hmm.
anyways, yeah, by some strange happening, I don't know if it was a teacher recommended it or somebody, I was placed into the GATE program after having like not qualified for it or something. And yeah, was just really weird, really, really weird thing. I don't think I got chosen for, some psychic child division of the CIA or something. But I wonder if that could have had something to do with my subsequent habit of being visited by entities or having spiritual
Yeah.
experiences.
Yeah. It's funny because I can't remember what one of the I guess most specific videos I've looked into about it, and it makes sense. It's frustrating because as the government goes, it operates with whatever projects, there's compartmentalization on information and all that mess. And so with my experience with the GATE program, I had a best friend in fifth grade, and he was there. And I don't know if it's so funny because you look at some of the characteristics they go, like a checklist on what helps you get, you know, qualified for GATE or whatever, whatever test you scoring on the 95th percentile or
Yeah.
98th, whatever. But on one of the lists too, because I think I saw the list when I was a kid, and it has like, does the child have blonde haired, blue eyed, did they have a near death experience,
Oh,
drowning,
interesting.
have you ever had a broken bone? And I've had the people who were, preliminary asking me stuff involving GATE, if I had all these things. And, it's like, yes, no. And so I had I passed it with flying colors with all the criteria, and so I thought to myself when I was a kid, it's like, this is kind of racist,
Yeah. Yeah.
but the thing is that I don't think it's racist as so much, going back to bloodlines and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's why
Right.
with the yeah, that's why with the elite, it's all about, bloodline bullcrap. And I don't really know mine too well, but they're stray dogs all around and everything.
You mean in your ancestry or whatever?
Yeah. Just as far as like, whatever. I have a very common last name. I mean, as far as like connected
Yeah.
to something,
I hear you. I hear you.
Yeah. But the thing is that like I guess I was calling to see if you had any like specific information past from what I've heard you share in the past and everything.
Yeah.
I mean, I've let me see. I don't remember anything before the age of 10. So the classic, not remembering stuff. I hadn't remembered what happened in the classes during the time, which is common with kids that have been in gate. So I didn't remember nothing from nothing. But when I finally remembered stuff, I'm like, oh yeah, they did put me in the class and all that, trying to clip the leaves off of bonsai plant, and making the little mobile on the top of the ceiling move, with my mind and doing the transcendental meditation and stuff.
Interesting.
What I'm so grateful for, is having a past that, is similar to yours, as in I was a kid and my mom took me to church when I was a kid. And so I, drew close to God and was close to God ever since I was a kid. And I can tell that a lot of the stuff they're trying to have me do is like, I could probably do them if I chose to not follow and love God. If I'd make a decision to be like, okay, God, I don't want, like basically I knew it was a sin. And if I wanted to go and be like, okay, God, I want to do these things, and choose to like not turn my back on God, but like just chose to basically sin or whatever to go and do those things. And so with the Zener cards, right, which were like the test that, memory in beginning, but to like go and like,
Yeah, the flash
predict
card.
them. Yeah. And so I passed that thing with flying colors.
Yeah.
And then but with one of the last questions they had, and I was just in a sense guessing per se, right? I wasn't even like, trying to, you know, uh, do it in the funky way or whatever, right? But there was the last question. She had it up. It's like, okay, what's this card? And I'm like, okay, God, I don't want to go and, use whatever in the bad way, spiritually bad way.
Right.
But God, if I was to go and guess, God, let it be by your telling me. And then I sensed what it was or whatever, and I guessed it, and it was right. And then they put me in the more like open class. But before that, I mean, I think I was in the program ever since I was like in kindergarten. But they never but what's common with gate kids is they never let the kids know that they're in it. And so until later, like around 4th, 5th, 6th grade. And so with the Zener cards and stuff, that was around 5th grade. But anyways, I'm starting to lose myself because it's probably a byproduct of all the pink drinks I had.
No, that's very interesting. Yeah, the Zener card. That was one thing. I also don't remember a whole ton. Like when I try to think back to it, I mean, childhood in general just kind of feels like a dream I had once. There's really not a lot of great, not like I have bad memories, but I only have like some snippets here and there of childhood, which interestingly enough, a couple snippets from the gate program, account for like a pretty high percentage of everything I remember from childhood. And there's a couple things that I remember. One is like some of them just seemed like arts and crafts. And there, I don't, like I said, I don't know if there was anything deeper. Some of it was some stuff on computers, but
Oregon Trail,
Yeah, you're right. Oregon Trail, which I think
Scorched
is
Earth.
interesting. Like everybody played Oregon Trail as a kid, but Gate program, you had these computer games that like that was the assignment. Like it wasn't
Yeah,
like have fun, play Oregon Trail. It was
yeah,
like play Oregon Trail, make good decisions. Let's see how you do, kind of vibe.
yeah.
There's this other one called Lemmings, I think. Which again,
Oh,
I
I
think
didn't get to play that one.
I
I think I'm from older or earlier years is why I didn't
earlier
have
year,
Lemmings.
right.
Yeah,
And, so yeah, I have, like, 3 memories from Gate. One is, just, like, this arts and crafts project of, like, building this gigantic theme park out of trash, which I'll have to sit and ask if God has anything to tell me about that. The other one was
yeah,
computer games, and the third one was, yeah, the Zenny cards, where
yeah,
it starts out as the memorization game, which of course everybody knows the memorization game, but then yeah, it would progress to guess what this card is.
yeah.
Like
Oh, yeah, yeah,
they would just hold it up, and because of the way they presented it, like again, the memory game kind of maybe warming you up or
yep,
starting the skills or something like that, so you can get used to knowing the ideas to like just know what it is without having seen it before. And I was always pretty good at it. I mean, I think that's very encouraging and very mature for you at the time to keep that to kind of have that perspective that like, okay, God, if this is the thing, because that's what the counterfeit is, right?
yeah,
These powers that they're looking for in children or psychics or whatever. Of course, practicing them in our own power is where we get to the distinction between, you know, operating in that realm against God and operating in that realm for God.
yeah.
And
That's what it
yeah,
seemed like.
yeah, I think very mature at that time to be able to consider like, I don't, I mean, more or less to put it in sort of adult terms, like
Yeah,
if it's your will, God, will tell me what the card is, something like that.
yeah,
Which I kind of wonder. I would be, again, I don't have a lot of memories, but I would be curious to maybe in the sweet by and by, God can reveal some of that history to me because I would be curious about what it is.
yeah. Did you and like a lot of gate people, it's very common to have people that are like government agents that go and connect with the kids like outside of a school setting, and then either ask them questions or sorry, my phone's blowing up. Shut up, NSA. Um, let me see. So yeah, so for I guess government kind of agents to go after like years after to to ex gate students and all that stuff like that and ask them either questions or whatever. I wanted to pick your brain if you had any sort of events that stuck out that there'd be guys that kind of did that with you because that happened with me and it super duper sucked because um, they gave me like stuff to drink and then Epstein-esque stuff happened
Oh no,
with hypnotism too and it wasn't a fun story.
no,
Not asking like specifically if something
yeah,
like that happened with you, but like as in like for whatever reason, like as in asking you about a certain program you'd be interested in or anything.
yeah. No, I see what you're asking now. Yeah, yeah. No, nothing. I'll say this. I have no memory of anything like that in the context of the GATE program. I
Okay.
will say maybe if 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 this pattern holds, I think God may have protected me from something like that. Um,
Amen.
because there's a couple times during my life, and the particulars aren't really that important, but I'll say this: there's a couple times in my life where I was in a situation that could have really gone the wrong way. I've been sort of stepping on the precipice of something horrible like that happening. And there's 2 or 3 actually that I can think of. And in each one of those situations, God protected me from that situation, from going down that road or something. Bad people, bad situations, me being totally out of my depth, being a child, and
Yeah.
the trusting adults thing is a whole thing.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
but thankfully, I don't have any memory of anything happening. Um, but there is definitely a couple situations in life where, yeah, God very specifically uh, put up a wall there in the situation for it to not happen. Which, it could have been the same thing with the GATE program.
Yeah.
God, I didn't pass the test. God didn't want me to pass the test. And
Yeah.
then somebody liked the cut of my jib and wanted me in the program for some reason. And
Yeah.
then, from what I remember, I don't remember it lasting very long is the thing. I don't know how long I was in the GATE program. I don't think I went for more than a year, or whatever, more than one semester or something. But it
Yeah.
could just be that I don't have the memories. But yeah, no, it's thankfully, again, in the collection of very specific times when God intervened in my life. Um, a couple of those were those sort of miraculous times.
Yeah. Praise God on that one. That's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm so grateful, but then I'm also, the other side of it is there's so many. It just that stuff happens so often. It's just horrifying.
Yeah. And also with kids trying to recall times in gate, or you know, tag, talented and gifted,
Mhm.
peak, or whatever names they switch around, but it's the same thing. Basically, when you're a kid from like kindergarten to fourth, fifth grade, and they're doing testing stuff on them, and you're in a sense in it, and playing Oregon Trail, all that other stuff. You're
Mhm.
in it, but you're not led known that you're in it. And so
Yeah, that's
usually,
interesting.
yeah, usually the parent, the school will go and call the parents, hey, your kid's really smart, blah blah blah. Do you want to be a proud mom or whatever? And they're like,
Yeah.
yeah, well, let would you want your kid in gate? They'll say yeah. And so you might be told that you're in it, but then school and classes won't be any different, and
Yeah.
the testing is kept out of your reach. So a lot of kids don't know that they're in it before fourth or fifth, but then around fourth or fifth, when they take you to those trailers and do that hearing test in the dark, and then they play the Robert Monroe gateway tapes and all that crap,
Right, right.
and then see if you're a good candidate to get hypnotized and all that mess. And then lo and behold, you're in gate. But gate proper, because there's a class A and a class B. Class A is the one that generally people refer to, where they're testing for all these abilities. You're touching chords with like electrical lines, and knowing, and being able to tell which ones have active power
Whoa!
and which ones don't.
I remember that. Oh my
Ha
gosh, you just
ha ha ha.
unlocked
Yep.
that. Oh my gosh, I totally
Yep.
remember that.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff, and that one was a recent memory for me. And then I'm like, yeah, this one's on, that one's off. And then they're like, how do you know? It's like, I just know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, do you remember being maybe a gate class happens or whatever, you're taken out of the room, but you're shown a video, and the video has like your classic sort of MK Ultra Disney weird stuff where just events happen, this thing, flowers being blown in the field, oceans by the water waves and junk. and then maybe like people are like loading up a piano in the truck, and then a scene sit or a scene skips, and then there's, you know, a guy getting killed with, you know, a weapon, and it's pretty graphic. And so that happened with me, and the guy who was showing me, which you know, looked like one of those non-teacher people that, you know, would seem like, you know, from the government or something.
Yeah, right. They bring in somebody from the special national program or something.
Yeah, but he looks kind of Poindextery or whatever.
Yeah, sure.
Uh, but he, so that scene happens, right? And then the video stops, right? And I go and I'm watching, I'm like, that doesn't seem child appropriate or whatever, you know, but like,
Mhm.
you know, I'm watching a movie, and so I'm not like emotionally disturbed, you know, but I'm a child. And so I look over at the guy, and the guy has like a horrified face, and he goes and looks at me. And so it's like he was acting
Ah,
like he was horrified, trying
right,
to gauge my reaction.
right.
You know, if I'd scream or whatever. And so his face was kind of stuck there because that's what he was supposed to be doing, but it looked a bit plasticky. And then I'm like, eh. And then I asked him, you know, like, what are we doing now or something, you know? And it sounds very psychopathic of me to not have any reaction, but, you know, it's different watching a movie than not.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's good, you know, there's always the topic of, like, if you don't have any reference for what you just saw, sometimes like, you don't even see it maybe. I don't know, I'm just trying
Yeah.
to think of, like, the weird psychological stuff, because that is a thing with babies. I don't know if this is any connection, but the funniest thing, I have friends who have babies, and it's hilarious. I always pay attention to this. Like, if a baby there was kind of a meme, this went around online for a while, where a parent would hold the baby, the parent would knock on a door and make a noise, but then act as if the baby had hit their head, like, go, "Oh, baby," hold their head, you know? Even
Yeah.
though the baby didn't hit their head, they knocked, and then the parent goes to comfort the child who hasn't gotten hurt, and then the baby reacts by crying, like they've learned to
Yeah.
cry because they've been taught to cry by the parents' reactions to things going on. And
Yeah.
I have multiple friends with babies, and there's this one friend, and they are totally the, "Oh, no," baby trips. "Oh, are you okay? Oh, ma can I kiss it? Oh," even the baby doesn't even do anything, they're just kind of these, like, very reactive parents.
Yeah.
Um, and the baby's just crying all the time. Like, it just doesn't, nothing could happen, and the baby's suddenly in disaster. And I have this other buddy who has a kid, and this kid is hitting his head all over the place. He's falling down. He's getting stuck in things. And it's funny because something will happen. And of course, my natural reaction would be like, "Oh my God, are you okay?" But I kind of take the cue from the parents, and they're just like totally non-reactive. Not that they ignore him, but they'll just be like, "Oh, a little bonk, huh?" or something. And the kid just like is indestructible, just never cries,
Heck yeah.
hasn't been taught how to react to things. So in the experiment that you explain, I can't explain it, but it seems related to, like, okay, show this kid something he's never seen before and try to cue a reaction to see if he's, like, susceptible to being cued,
Ah.
sort of.
Yeah, it's just a su suggestibility.
Yeah, so, like, can we make him super scared or sad or something when
Interesting.
we want him to be or something? I don't know, just kinda connecting the dots here. That's very
Yeah. Yeah. Crap. I have a lot of other stuff and everything like that. I also don't wanna take away, the time from the rest of the Canarians.
No, no, that's totally cool. I will say that I'm impressed by how much that you have remembered, or at least have.
There's more. It's made it hard to hold a job. Gosh dang. But
Yeah, how do you feel, like, what do you think the effects in your adult life are from the stuff that you are aware of? Like,
oh man,
how do you mean it makes it now, I will say, I obviously have a problem with traditional employment. At this point, I am entirely unemployable except by the grace of God. And
yeah,
for my whole life, I think I only got one job. I mean, I've been working my whole life, but I've only had one job that I got the normal way uh by putting in a thing and getting interviewed and working at a place. The rest of
yeah,
my jobs, somehow either God just puts me there or I make the job myself, you know.
yeah.
How do
Shoot.
you think, in what ways, and it doesn't have to be related to that, but in what characteristics here in your adult life do you feel are connected to your gate experience?
Man, let me see it. That's a very interesting question.
You
Okay,
certainly
so
don't
I.
have to share if anything's too sensitive, of course. I'm just
Oh
curious,
yeah,
just in
I'll
case
try to
any
make it
just
kid
in case
friendly.
yeah, just in case anybody else is like, I don't know, what was I in the gate? What am I like? Is that like, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it's extremely interesting because probably the entails of what the answer to the question is probably why we were picked to be in the gate program in the first place.
Mhm.
As far as like testing and like whatever the truth is with, like, I guess, quote unquote neurodivergency and all that.
Right.
Because what I hear is common is that reason why you're picked for those programs is that you're some brand of neurodivergent.
Mhm.
um us discerning and navigating through life, like if we just take a test, it might not just be take a test and an ABCD answer isn't as typical for a lot of people, because I remember going through all these tests and they give like A, B, C, and D. It's like, dude, what the heck? Like, none of these are the answer.
Right,
Like,
right.
within C, that generally that's the answer. C sounds wrong. There's four implications to what that even means, and the rest of them, there's like 15 different answers that's rolled up within all them.
Yeah,
What the
there's
heck do you
no
mean, teacher, when you can't ask a question?
right.
Because there's five different answers and all these could be right.
Yeah,
you
none of
know
the answers are right enough, to
yeah,
be distinguished from the other.
yeah. And so as far as people trying to pick out those answers, I don't know if there's like a meta test maker to make them so infuriatingly non-descriptive enough to
Yeah.
be able to make a person who can think, I guess, with a bandwidth, or I don't know, processor or whatever. This, I wish I was computer savvy, but basically you can think you have like 8 different processors working at the same time about different whatever.
Yeah.
um
Yeah, you're like kind of trying to harness different perspectives and different, almost like different dimensions of the same question or answer, and kind of
yeah,
holding them all at the same time. This is why I was always bad at math. I don't know about you,
yeah.
but I'm
I
very
used to be I used to be good until they fried that out. That, or it was the pink drinks. I don't know.
who knows? It's something I've always noticed about myself, just like bad at math, not because I'm incapable of going through the steps of solving a problem, but it's just like I don't know. It's just like I've just it doesn't compute. I just I honestly, now that I'm trying to say it out loud, I don't even know if I can put words to it quite yet. But it's just like nope. it's almost like the finality and the certainty of solving a math equation where there's like one answer and it's either right or wrong. For some reason, that I have a very hard time dealing with that kind of logic. It's very strange.
Except when it comes into like moral things or whatever.
Yeah,
possibly.
not
I don't know.
not to imply that like I don't think like truth exists or something.
Yeah.
But it's just I don't know, something about that process. It's more about the process than like the philosophy of truth or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
No idea what it is.
Yeah.
Goodness gracious. Well, that's great, man. So where did you get all your information? Is there a pipeline for people who want to go research their time in the GATE program?
Darn, it's extremely hard. The good stuff I remember that's very good and helpful. I forgot every single one of those things, but praise God, it's on YouTube, so people will be able to find it.
Mhm.
But then a huge
do a little GATE program documentary. It looks like the GATE program, what really happened to these kids. Somebody made a documentary on YouTube, but
yeah,
it's part of it.
and I probably started on that one as far as like somehow the topic got brought up, and then like I entered the research, and then I think I've run into that. I can't remember the channel's name, and I think you talked about it on whenever I think the initial time you talked about that.
I could see doing a basic search for GATE program, documentary or something would be absolutely ripe for intelligence to come in and like invade the research space and turn it to like full crazy conspiracy tinfoil hat, like a bunch of bad information very easily could slip in and send people on all sorts of wild.
Absolutely. And it's so hard to even answer that question, because I can give you the answer and then you can go and do your research and end up becoming believing you're a star seed and all that other stuff, which unfortunately I think was like not a backdoor, a sort of built-in thing into a lot of the GATE kids, that when they started to suspect or wake up about stuff, they'd already be primed to go down the star seed path because of so much stuff that was instilled in them. And if they don't have God to help them suss out that, then they would open arms, go down that program path for them to go, and then you're just going down New Age and worse and all that. Let alone, and I'm glad I didn't look into this, but as far as the different homework and stuff, they basically go through the meditation stuff, instill in you a what the heck is it? A tulpa. It's like an egregore, whatever.
Like a
mental,
a thought
structure. A thought structure, that basically is like a god. Depends on what version they really want to instill in that, but generally it's like an alien god. Like even within the possible documentary you were talking about, or at least the one I have in mind, where there's a couple videos with it, and I think they even go down that path, and they'll use tulpa and all that other stuff. But it's basically a god, but it's alien. It's also a pyramid with an eye on it, and you'll go and start accepting that is like the god figure, and you're a star seed, and and I believe that's programmed into the person. I remember the homework with all that stuff. They had that. They were really pissed off at me when I took the homework and I slipped it in somebody else's homework cubby, and they got really mad because it was only for my eyes to see. And that very day when I got in trouble about that, I had there was two school age girls that were like look around the same age and grade as me, but I've never seen them on the school. And then they went over and they're having a conversation right in front of me, which it seemed like there was no reason for them to be in front of me. There was nobody around, but they just ended up, being there when I left the classroom. And they talked about, hey, did you go to Mall World last night and everything? And they're all talking this and that and everything. And then I'm like, what's Mall World? And then I think they even said like Crystal Mall or something like that. But in either case, they said, oh, well, it's a place that, when we dream, we can all meet up and everything like that. And it's at Mall World, blah, blah, blah. Right. And I do have Mall World dreams, and it sucks, or had. So they talked about it, and I did my homework, which is the homework I was supposed to do last night. And that very night, I believe I did go to Mall World, and it wasn't cool. It had your classical, you try to go to the bathroom, every single toilet is destroyed. There's all this bio material on the floors that's very disgusting.
Yeah.
And what sucked is I think, and I went to the bathroom a few times as far as like physically, like I went inside the bathroom, but I didn't like go or anything. But I physically went inside the bathroom a few times whenever I went there. But the moment that I actually chose to go to the bathroom, I almost got sucked down to through the toilet hole, whatever, through the stream that I was making. And then I was in the under part, and it was like really nasty. It was like sewage-y-ish.
Crazy.
Anyway, sorry.
Yeah. No, I just did again a cursory search. Yeah, and some Mall World gate program, Mall World. Yeah, this is all coming up here. That's very interesting.
Yeah, sorry if my mind's not keeping on track.
No, you're good. You've been charging it, man. And yeah, no worries. I was letting it run because we don't have any callers behind you. So,
okay.
But we're coming up on what? We're a little bit after 2 hours, so we're good. We can start winding down. But no,
Okay.
I'm just very interested in that because yeah, it was a thing a couple months ago. Of course, we were talking about it, and I just I didn't keep looking into it. Part of me, and I don't know if this is true or not, but when it comes to going down rabbit holes, I believe that I have to believe, and I do believe that the Lord really guides me when it comes to where I'm putting my attention, at least as far as these sorts of things, because I'm also totally aware it could totally continue to be part of the gate program or part of some operation or the information, the documentaries, the stuff available online could so easily be coordinated, if not by the gate program itself or intelligence to try to hide tracks, or even who knows, some AI thing. We all need to be pretty aware of the ways we're getting sort of sucked down various rabbit holes, because we know that that's kind of part of it now. That's part of the program. I mean, we're watching it with like Candace Owens and people who are super wrapped up in that. They're like, oh, they've really wised up. They know that a very effective way to either affect people on a population level or affect individuals for one reason or another is to kind of create this chapel perilous. Aleister Crowley talked about chapel perilous, and it's this labyrinth, like in the sort of magical journey, like a journey to become a magician or whatever. Chapel perilous is this labyrinth that it's described as like a labyrinth of synchronicities, a labyrinth of like basically if you start searching in Aleister Crowley's case, to become a magician for the sort of magical truth, you'll enter this phase of life where it'll feel like a maze, but every direction you go feels like you're going the right direction. Like synchronicities will lead you around, and you will start, basically just getting lost. Like the Chapel Perilous is this like defense structure to keep people basically psychotic. Like the idea is to, along this trip of them trying to find truth or find power or whatever, they enter into the Chapel Perilous, and the idea is to keep them running in circles, basically until they go crazy, and don't pass the test or something. So sometimes, especially these days, I'm looking around, I'm kind of feeling weird about how the whole world is, conspiracy theorists now, and you got mainstream, Daily Mail reporting all the old conspiracy theories as news. I'm like, oh, it kind of feels like it could be a perilous time to kind of get sucked into one of these kind of Chapel Perilous situations.
It feels that way, yeah.
Yeah, and not to say that if anybody's going down rabbit holes, right now, that's necessarily happening to them, but I'm just feeling, at least sort of discerning for myself, like be very choosy, be very careful about which direction you go down, because it could be can get froggy.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for calling in, man. It was great talking to
thank
you.
you.
Appreciate it. Yeah, thanks for helping me walk down the memory lane with the GATE program. I'm definitely gonna keep an eye out. See, I'll do some praying. I'll see if the Lord wants to reveal anything to me, that, because of course I don't want to know anything. I don't want to remember anything that He doesn't specifically want me to remember. So.
It can have a funny effect, because I think that's what happened with me, is that, like, I started remembering more things than I wasn't ready for.
Yeah, right.
So, but yeah, absolutely. And if anybody's out there too, like, pray that if you do want to know the truth, pray to God that that He helps you be able to handle it and be faithful to no matter what comes your way, as far as following Him through it all.
Amen, buddy. God bless you. Thanks for calling in, buddy.
God bless you too, man.
Call in again if you get the chance.
Yeah, I'll try to write down some stuff to pick your brain with things too. Also, I guess with answering the question, with how many ways we went without answering the question, that could have been the reasons why people were picked to be in GATE or whatever. But yeah, anyways, God bless you, Basil. Thank you.
Let's do it. Well, we can do our own little mini series here on Clubhouse of exploring the GATE program and all these things. We'll see. I'm sure there's some more people out there. All right, buddy. God bless you. You take it easy.
God bless you too. All right, take care.
Bye. Yeah, so interesting. Yeah, again, I mean, I don't know, man. It's we're in this time where the whole culture, everything online, even the mainstream media now is encouraging all of us to go down the rabbit holes, and I'm just very suspicious of that. Very suspicious. Just to refer to something. So I saw the chat going by while I was chatting with Liquid Bacon, and I think this is a little bit related. Okay, talking about how conspiracy theories or rabbit holes or these layers of deception, they go in all directions, right? Not every rabbit hole you're going on is even dug by an actual rabbit. A lot of them are counter narratives, counter conspiracies, misinformation, which could themselves be some sort of operation to guide you somewhere, if not to guide you away from somewhere, to guide you to somewhere. These are these are a couple different options. These rabbit holes can lead you away from something, or they could lead you to something they want you to be at. But it's just going to take discernment. Discernment can only come from God. And kind of there's this person in chat, Gerald here. Gerald started with mentioning, can someone please explain how the Bible isn't the earliest form of predictive programming? Well, while, we could certainly go on for days and days and days, you got to actually think of the history of the actual Bible, right? So the Bible was a bunch of books, separate. And then we're just the separate writings of separate people who would be collected by the church, the way, this underground, they're considered a cult at the time by the Romans, this underground spiritual movement called the Way, early Christianity. And they would write letters to each other, and they would write this and that, specifically talking about the New Testament. The Old Testament was very well established. I mean, for 1,000 years, 2,000 years by the time Jesus came around. So like, that's even older. That's a whole history of the Hebrew people writing down their own history, writing down, again, the Bible isn't one thing. There's a whole book that is just like a list of names. There's a whole book that's like a really graphic love letter. There's a whole like, it's a bunch of stuff, right? And so, if you say, okay, is it predictive programming? Well, predictive programming, a lot of this is actually used in, I believe, incorrectly a lot, where, predictive programming meaning, oh, they're wanting, I don't know, it's fake or something. But predictive programming doesn't necessarily mean anything's fake. In modern terms, predictive programming is, they know something is going to happen. They want to make something happen. Something big is happening, and they want to give people a framework for how to respond. Because much like what Liquid Bacon and I just talked about, where, the baby doesn't know to cry unless the parents cue the baby, basically. And if you don't cue your baby to cry at little tiny things, then you're going to save yourself a lot of hearing loss. Now, of course, babies are going to cry if they get really hurt or something, but you can actually teach your baby to cry even when it's not hurt by just pretending that it's hurt. That's predictive programming. And so in cinema terms, hey, aliens are real. We need to figure out, I mean, we can't tell anybody. How are we going to tell them? We got to keep this secret, but it's going to come out eventually. So let's make some alien movies, right? We'll make some alien movies. We'll teach people to either be afraid of them, or we'll teach people that aliens actually want to help us. They came to bring us our technology, or they teach the predictive programming is really just it's giving us a framework for how to respond to an event that is coming. So to call the Bible predictive programming, I don't think it even fits. Now, you can say, maybe the Bible was made to control people's minds so they're subservient to authority. And that's a much more common. I mean, talk about fedora atheist, middle school kind of atheism. The Bible was made to control the population. Well, that doesn't really fit with the history of the Bible, because first of all, the Bible is just this big collection of books. There was hundreds of them. And then the Council of Nicaea and some other Christian leaders, as the movement was growing, as Christianity became popular, because it was really a revolution. The idea of a single God, and a single God who sent his son to die, was revolutionary in human spirituality or religious experience. Because before a single God sent his son to die, every single religion was, there's lots of gods. There's not just one. That's ridiculous. There's lots of gods. How could there just be one? The world is too big for just one God. because they're thinking of their gods as super beings, basically humans, but more powerful. And not only is there more than one god, but we don't want our god to die. Like, our gods are powerful. Like, they're bigger, they're better. They don't die. Dying is, why would that be good? A god dying is bad. And there are stories of gods dying, but they die and they're dead and it's bad and they're sad about it. So to come into the religious atmosphere of the ancient world and say, no, there's just one, blew people's minds. Like, how could there possibly just be one? The world is so huge. One super being, as they thought. Remember, the ideations of the divine go through not a cycle, but a step. There's super being, which is basically a person, a man, but like very powerful, like a Superman. That's God. That's the Roman gods, the Greek gods. They're basically people, but they like have extra powers. Then there's hyper being, which was another level of this, and that is something more than man, kind of beyond our comprehension, and that's where a lot of like Yahweh was sort of ideated as I'm sorry, early monotheism was like God is a hyper being, meaning he's a very, very big, special being who's not in the form of a man. He could be invisible and everywhere. But then after super being and hyper being, there's ground of being, which is the thing, the guy who allows existence to exist, including, that's where the logos comes in. Christ is the logos. It is the code underwriting all of existence, the code that allows physics to exist and atoms to stay together and all these things. So it was really big, this really revolutionary idea that not only is there not multiple gods, there's just one. That's already blowing people's minds. And that he had a son, and his son was the logos of the universe, the very code that lets existence exist. Again, way too big. Like, that's crazy sounding. But then the logos, the code that allows existence to exist, dies on purpose in a humiliating way, helpless on a cross. There's no war, there's no angels. He dies this humiliating, painful death. What in the world are you talking about? Like, we take it for granted, but in the ancient world, this is just like shattering to the mind. And if you think about it for too long these days, it's still shattering to the mind. That's the beautiful thing about it. But that's why Christianity was even lasted at all. That's why small, tiny groups of people did what they did. And that's why it continued to grow, despite being persecuted and hundreds and hundreds of years of the biggest empires on earth trying to specifically hunt down and smother and destroy these small groups of people who believe in this one God with the logos, the sun dying. And it's just like, what are they thinking? These people, this is so stupid. Okay, so that's some context. Now, while these small groups of people were hiding in caves, secretly meeting, getting hunted down by the Romans, fed to the lions, they wrote letters to one another. They wrote books to one another. They had these scrolls. They sent them all around. And because this revolutionary spiritual idea of Christ, God's son, dying while being the code of the universe is just so powerful, a large collection of these writings exist. Now, goes a few hundred more years later, Christianity gets bigger and bigger. It's officially like more official. Is this whole big thing, and all these writings are floating around the whole time, right? before the Council of Nicaea and a couple other events, Christians just had tons of scrolls that they were telling each other and writing to each other and exploring and teaching and preaching to one another. And so finally, they say, hey, there's enough of us now. There's all these crazy things. What had started to happen is that there were so many people writing so many things that people started just kind of making stuff up. I mean, that's the concern, at least. It's like, okay, we've been around for a couple hundred years. There's all these scrolls, all these books. We have Christianity is big and powerful enough, not that it was the most powerful, but it was powerful enough that infiltrators started coming in and say, okay, how do we destroy the Christians? Okay, let's write a book or let's write a scroll, pretend to be Christian, and send it around and try to mess up other churches, try to mess up Christianity. And so, the Council of Nicaea got together, a bunch of Christian leaders says, okay, we got to settle this down. Okay, we can't just have any old schmuck, writing their own stuff and sending it to all the Christians. It's causing chaos. So they come together, they have this big old meeting. They take all the scrolls and all the books and all the letters, most of which had been preserved meticulously for generations. And they said, okay, we'll take these ones. These are the ones. This is canon. We'll do this. And that's not the 66 books that we work with today, but it was added a little bit more. You get the point. I'm going to skip over some of the details. So the point was, now after they decided this is the Bible, okay, we'll work off of this thing here. For like 1,000 years, regular people were not allowed to read it or look at it or touch it. So if the Bible was created to mind control the masses, wouldn't you want the masses to actually read it? Wouldn't you want them to have if it's supposed to like hypnotize Joe the blacksmith, why not give it to him? If it was designed to program him, just give it to him. That's just not how the ancient world works, okay? It's just, of course, the Bibles were sort of, the Latin Bible specifically was kept to be, it was precious, each one had to be written by hand, and it took like 10 years for a monk to write it by hand. And so each one of them was precious. You couldn't just give it to some guy to walk down the street, and that's where, as the Catholic Church started developing, then you get Christian government, you get, how do we preserve these books that are so important? Well, you can't just let a blacksmith with his grubby hands, touch the pages. Plus, they can't even read Latin anyways, it's this specialized thing. So you could say maybe the Bible was made to hypnotize priests. Yeah, I guess you could say that. But the problem is the Bible is so broad, so complicated, and written by so many different people. This is, again, back to the middle school atheism idea. And I say this because of the experience I had with my own middle school atheists. I've told the story of my friend Kyle. And he just could not let go of the idea that one person wrote the whole Bible. He just was convinced that just one crazy guy wrote the whole Bible. Now, there is nothing more historically supported than the chain of custody of the various books of the Bible. Not to say there's not some academic argument about, did John write John? Did Paul write John and just named it John? There's academic conversations to be had. Okay, that's okay. But no one of any serious level of knowledge of history, of archaeology, of any of these things nobody would suggest that one person wrote the whole thing, especially because the various books of the Bible were written 2,000 years away from one another. Okay. All right. So there we go. The modern mind has a hard time comprehending this, because if we get a book, right, today, if we get a book, we watch a movie, we watch a TV show, we literally interact with any piece of media, usually there is one author, one guy wrote a book, or one guy directed a movie. Maybe a couple guys wrote the movie. This centralized media creation that we have today is so far outside of the modern man's, or I'm sorry, the ancestral man's comprehension of how even information is recorded. So, yeah, if the Bible were written today, we could say, okay, this was written by one guy who's trying to trick people. But you go back to the very, 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 very earliest scrolls in the Dead Sea Scrolls, the versions of, I think it was Isaiah, the versions of, these various books of the Bible that exist, that were just found, by the way, in our recent memory. Not only do they not only are they accurate, but in some versions they are word for word. Not a single word has changed since thousands of years ago when they were made. Okay, so this is just, there is nothing in history, nothing in archaeology, nothing in these academic realms that is as supported than the authorship of the Bible. Again, sorry, not even of the Bible, of the various books of the Bible. And excruciatingly specific history of how the Bible was made, what versions, the whole thing. It was literally the single piece of media for thousands of years. There was the whole species of humanity was devoted to securing and guaranteeing the viability of the Bible. So much so that if a monk messed up, like if he wrote something else in there, with very few exceptions, it was like punishable by death to just mess up in writing a Bible, because it was that important. Okay, so I don't think predictive programming is a good word for it. The truth is, the academic, scholarly, secular truth about the Bible was that it was written by a bunch of people. A bunch of guys got together. It's a very documented history. And that's where we're at. Not to say every version of the Bible, if you're reading the Message or something, there's translations. And translations is an issue all of us have to deal with. All Christians. We need to constantly discern what translations are for us, which one works, which one doesn't. A lot of people are King James. A lot of people have a problem with King James. It's just a part of being a Christian. It's just part of being a human being dealing in a fallible world. Okay, so back to Jarrett. Jarrett says, your best advice to reading and understanding. Please, I tried praying for understanding, but reading, let me read this again. Your best advice to reading and understanding. Please, I tried praying for understanding before reading and nothing happens. And I hope Jarrett's still here, because I hope Jarrett hears me. What you're describing is just a natural part of interacting with the Bible. It is a natural part. All Christians have to go through the process of reading the Bible. And a ton of the Bible feels very not important. I'll say it. Hey, You guys can lynch me if you want. Numbers? The book of Numbers? You're reading chapter after chapter of Japheth begat Moses begat Eliezer begat. Okay, it is okay to come in contact with the book of Numbers and go, I'm not getting anything from this. It's okay. It's okay. And so the best advice that anybody can give you, because understanding only comes from God. This is very clear to us. This is basically explicitly said to us. When it comes to scripture, understanding only comes from God. We do not understand with our own logic. I've been talking about it this whole episode, okay? Human logic is so limited. Not to say it's useless. Logic is great. Logic gets us a lot of things. Logic gets us through this world. I'm not saying logic is bad. But there is another thing, and that is logos. That is Christ. That is the mind of Christ. That is any understanding that we are given comes from God. And so if you're having trouble understanding the Bible, A, welcome to the club. B, try a different part of the Bible. I don't know where you started. I don't know what you did. I don't know who's whatever. A, you did the right thing. Pray for understanding. And then read. But there's another part of it, which is talk about it. Find someone else. Find a Christian friend. Find a study group. Find a whatever. While the Bible is sufficient for each of us, part of being a Christian has always been interaction with the brethren. I mentioned it before. Where two or more are gathered in his name, there he is also. And if our understanding and our common sense and our Christ sense comes from God, then a good way for that to experience that is to get in conversation with other Christians. Lovingly, you can be corrective of one another, you can argue, but leave your emotional baggage at the door. Now, you said you did pray and you're still not understanding. Well, I'd say go find someone or a group where you can talk and study it together. The other thing, I don't know if you were here for the emu egg metaphor, but it takes time. The emu egg does not hatch the next day you turn it on its side. If you're not bearing fruit, if you're looking, you're examining, you're opening that egg, and it's not bearing fruit and you're not understanding, you need to find what you need to change. You need to change it, and you need to do it every day for 2 months. So I understand. You tried reading the Bible, you go, I don't get this. And then you go, okay, maybe I'll try praying. Okay, Lord, help me understand the Bible. And then you go back, you read the Bible, and you still don't understand it. And you go, well, that didn't work. No. It takes time. Pray, then read the Bible, and then do it again. Pray, read the Bible, do it the next day. Do it for 60 days. I challenge you, Jarrett, to pray and read the Bible 10 minutes a day, every day, for 60 days. And then, if you can, once a week, find somebody to talk about what you've read with them. Even if all you have to say is, I don't understand this. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believe in him shall not perish but have everlasting life. I don't get it. What does that mean to you, other person? And that's when the Holy Spirit comes. That's when you are in communion. It's a whole thing. Okay. Jared says not trying to be a pain. Yeah, I know you're not trying to be a pain. Oh, I know you know that. Yeah. Yeah, no, Jared, I'm stoked that you're asking these questions, and I'm stoked that I get an opportunity to share this. And I'm not some sort of theological titan, but I have been a Christian for 30 something years. And so this is just coming from experience, okay? I'm just giving you helpful things that I have lived. Jarrett then says, it is this whole thing I cannot describe. Life is painful in the worst way. Maybe I tried, but didn't make it. Yeah. Life is painful in the worst way. You should read the book of Job. I'll give you some suggestions. Life is tough. Half of this entire podcast, half of not just this episode, Clubhouse, that like the whole series of this podcast, Clubhouse, is basically Christians getting to come together and lament about how painful and hard life is. Now we get an extra bonus because we get to fellowship in Christ, encourage one another, standing next to one another, shoulder to shoulder, as we all weather these different spiritual battles. And so if you want to read about how hard life is, read the book of Job, read Lamentations. Lamentations is a hardcore one. I'd probably save some books for later. Numbers, maybe Deuteronomy. Exodus is pretty good, but I'd start in the New Testament. I mean, unless you want the savagery, you can do Job, Lamentations. Psalms is good, and Proverbs. If you're kind of like a wisdom kind of guy, if you kind of like, little bits of like hardcore, like spiritual truth, Proverbs is good because they come in little chunks and it's just kind of like wise sayings. And it'll give you a picture for how we are to understand the characteristics of God. Then Jarrett says, my mind requires logic. And just to be clear, I'm not having an ego battle. Yes, I know, Jarrett. All of our minds require logic. Every human requires logic. But our logic only goes so far. And you got to remember, when you're talking about God, when you're talking about the Bible, when you're talking about Christ, these things are inherent mysteries. They are meant to be mysterious. They are meant to be beyond our logic. They are meant to be the unreachable parts of existence, okay? Not just existence in a broad spatial way, like the end of the universe. We can't see past the end of the universe. That's a distance, that's a width, but a depth, okay? A depth down to metaphorically, sort of the quantum level of what existing is like. And these are things, to continue the metaphor. I don't know if you know much about quantum mechanics, Jarrett. You probably do. But quantum mechanics is a problem because once you get small enough, you have relativity, classical physics that rule everything sort of human sized, right? Quantum mechanics is you get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, and you get down to like the atom. Now, the problem with quantum mechanics is that none of the logic, none of the physics, none of the logic, none of the rules to the universe, another word for that would be logos, none of the logos of the quantum realm matches regular sized physics. That's the whole mystery, okay? So consider seeking God, eternal divine things, Christ, the mystery of the crucifixion, the mystery, all this stuff. Think of that like quantum mechanics. It's the quantum mechanics of the soul. Because if a physicist says, I like logic, okay? I'm a physicist, E equals mc squared. I have a doctorate in physics. I know how gravity works. I know what makes the air move. I know what makes the planets spin. I am a very logical physicist, and I can tell you how everything works. Well, none of that logic, that very learned, that very correct logic, none of the logic that that physicist has applies to a single electron in the quantum realm. A classical physicist goes down to the quantum realm. He is totally lost. In fact, a lot of his logic is totally upside down. A bunch of the physical rules of the quantum realm are literally opposite of what they are out here in the big world. So think of God, the spiritual realm, spiritual truths. Don't think of them as an extension of the universe. Think of them as a depth dimension. You're going down, 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 down into the quantum realm. Not literally, this is a metaphor. The quantum realm where none of your logic can be counted on. Your logic will not be the key to truth because your logic only applies to out here. And you go, well, that's stupid. If God is real, then he'll be logical and I should be able to figure him out. My tiny, puny human brain should be able to figure out the code of the universe just using my normal logic. It's very silly. It's very silly sounding. And Jared, you know, I'm not trying to pick on you, but I'm just making a point here. It's very silly. Our logic stops. If you're a science person, your logic fails at the quantum realm. If you're a spiritual person, your human logic fails at the spiritual realm. But we don't get mad. You don't say the quantum world doesn't exist because it doesn't go by Einstein's physics. The quantum realm is stupid. I don't understand it. It doesn't do E equals mc squared, so therefore it is wrong. And anyone who believes in the quantum physics is religious and silly. You don't say that. Right? You don't say that. That's just part of the beauty of it. So part of the beauty, as the Bible says, God hides mysteries, and it's up to kings to find those mysteries. And what it's saying there is God is so big, so complicated, so far beyond where our logic and our mind can even perceive, that even the greatest men on earth, you know, in the language of the Bible, in the language of the time, the kings. And remember, king is not just like I wear a crown. A king in the ancient world was believed to be a descendant of that. They were divine. That's the language being told to us in the scripture. You know, it's not just kings as in like politicians. When God says he hides mysteries and it's up to kings to find them, the kings were like this ultimate, almost divine figure of themselves. They were thought to have a direct line to the divine, that every one of their actions was endorsed by the spiritual, you know, this whole thing that we don't necessarily believe now, but in the language of the Bible, it says right there, the mysteries are so beyond that even the smartest, richest, most ordained human being is sort of destined to spend their entire life searching for them and not finding them until it's too late, basically. Yeah. This is a good point. So, yeah, I've thought a lot about this. So, Jarrett goes on to say, he says, I believe in God, but I don't believe in Jesus because I can't blindly believe. Okay. And then he says, that sounds blasphemous to say, but maybe the story of Jesus is Satan's story. Okay. This is not an uncommon theory, by the way. In fact, what you're saying is straight up Luciferian theology. And I don't mean that as a, no, those Satanists. I'm just saying that is the theology of Luciferianism. It's the theology of the occult, where their whole thing, right? Many of these esoteric traditions, clubs, secret societies, mystery religions, which is hilarious because by their very nature, these are just, I don't know why you would trust Luciferians more than you would trust the Bible. Well, actually, I do. Here's why. Luciferianism, the theology of Luciferianism, is explicitly and proudly, they'll tell you this. The theology is Christianity turned on its head. So then they're very proud about this. And this is their whole thing is no, Christianity is opposite. It's, that's a deception. That's meant to deceive you. The real theology is you take Christianity and you turn it upside down, and then that's real. That's the true one. It's like not even creative. They're just saying like, yeah, Christianity, no, it's opposite. It's different. It's opposite of that. Yeah, and Lucifer, the light bearer, is this is the counterfeit of Jesus. The story of Lucifer getting kicked out of heaven because he wanted to bring knowledge to the people because he's such a good guy. I mean, it's not even a different story than is told in the Bible. It's just the story told in the Bible with middle school atheist logic. Do you see? They are retelling the story of Christ, retelling the stories of the Bible, but they're retelling it through their own logic. Well, if Satan wanted Eve to eat of the apple, it must have been because he wanted to give them knowledge. He wanted them. Why wouldn't God want them to be smart? Why not? He must be the good guy. Prometheus, Lucifer, he wanted to bring fire down from the gods, give it to man. Well, that must be the good guy. And it's the same rebellious nature that, atheists sort of revel in, right? It's always the funniest thing to me. It might not be so much like this now, but back when I was younger, it was a different time. It was early 2000s. And this new movement called New Atheism came around. And they all started, doing atheist arguments for everything. And their whole thing kind of had this flavor of like, nah, we're right because we're like punk rock, right? No, we're you silly Christians. You're so square. It's just oh my gosh, how boring can you be? Everybody, and this was the thing, was like, I'm very unique. and I'm very punk rock, and I'm very cool because I believe the opposite of what everybody else believes. I'm so singular and unique that I believe this different thing. Which is funny because they have to paint a picture of the world for themselves. They have to paint this picture where everyone else in the world is a good Christian. And they're the cool punk rock guy because they're alone and solo and have the truth that nobody else has. It's like, bro, as far as society as a whole has been concerned, Christianity has been the rebellious thing to do. My whole life, nobody's ever been like, oh, Basil, you're Christian? That's cool. I think that's cool. Wow, I don't feel weird around you at all. Wow, I don't make a bunch of horrible assumptions about you because you're Christian. No, somebody knows you're Christian, they're like, well, you must hate women. Well, you must hate women and you like slavery. It has not been cool or acceptable to be a Christian in secular society my entire life. Now, some arguments could say that it was a little cooler in like the 50s or something, you know, back when the government was running operations to turn Christianity into an active voting bloc. Suddenly, for about a decade, it was cool for a second to be a Christian in public society. But then, that was just to, convince all the Christians to vote a certain way. Just think about it. The 60s wasn't cool to be Christian. What are you talking about? 70s, groovy, dude, not cool. There was a moment in the 70s during the Jesus freak movement, but that was very small, and that was rebellious. The Jesus freaks in the 70s were the punk rock rebellious ones because they were turning away from the secular culture. The Jesus freaks weren't the boring everybody's a Jesus freak. No, the Jesus freaks were called freaks because they were the punk rock ones. 80s metal music, not very cool to be a Christian. 90s, was the 90s. What can you say? The 90s was the 90s. But as far as popular culture is concerned, no, not very cool to be. When has it ever been cool and accepted to be a Christian? Not in my life. And I don't think not since the 50s, and only in the 50s because of the government operation social engineering project that tried to bring Christians into a single voting bloc. So bringing it back to the story of Jesus being Satan's story. It sounds like you have spent some time reading or listening or getting influenced by Luciferian theology. And it's funny because much like how during COVID, this phrase came around and the authorities, the institutions, the government, COVID came around and they said, we need to pre-bunk the bad conspiracy theories. We need to tell people our side of the story before they hear the part of the story that we don't want them to hear, the part we don't want them to believe. You can fill in those gaps, whatever you want. But the government, the institutions, the media, they made up this phrase pre-bunking, right? Which means, oh no, we got to get to people first. And the reason they needed to do that, much like the conversation about the GATE program, what matters most is not the information that someone receives. That is not the most important thing. Here's a piece of information, I receive it. That's not the most important part. The most important part is how that information is framed before it gets to me. Because however it's framed before I receive it dictates how I see that information. So, for instance, pre-bunking. This particular medical treatment that we're going to force you to get is safe and effective and has been tested and is very good. Well, then suddenly you receive the information that maybe the testing didn't happen. Maybe it looks like a lot of people are having some negative consequences. Maybe, some information reaches you. But if you've been pre-bunked, if it's been framed that that information is conspiracy theory, you're not even going to see it. You're not going to see it because it's already been framed for you. You're not even going to pay attention. You're not going to look into it. You're not going to let it into you, which is really sort of the spiritual truth of it, right? If you pre-bunk, if someone gets to you with information first, they can actually inoculate you, if you will. They can vaccinate you against information they don't want you to have. And that's why Luciferian theology is so well known. Why? Because it's in the movies, because it's in the TV shows. All broad population media is written from a Luciferian theology. Don't believe me? There are millions and millions and millions and millions of videos on YouTube. Pick any TV show, any movie, anything you like. Somebody has done a video breaking down the Luciferian theology of that movie. Literally doesn't matter which one. Doesn't matter if it's a Pixar movie. Doesn't matter if it's a Godfather. Doesn't matter if it's whatever. Somebody has or will do a YouTube video picking out all the little symbolism, all the little theologies, all the little characters, all the mythos, all the myths contained within that story. And it is always from a Freemason, Luciferian, satanic, occult, esoteric, mystery school theology. And so if before you've read the Bible, all you've ever come in contact with is movies, TV shows, mass media, you've been pre-designed, predetermined to see any Christian message as something that it's not, to keep you away. And that's why I don't blame you, Jared. I don't blame anybody who has a hard time coming in contact with Christian theology for the first time. It's not because you're broken. And this is what I think answers your question, Jared. It's not because you're broken. It's not because you're stupid. It's not because you're cut off from spiritual truth. The reason you're having trouble reading the Bible and the reason you're having trouble understanding what the Bible is saying, the reason that your first instinct to opening up God's word is because you have a lifetime of pre-programming from the media, from culture, from school. I don't know how old you are, but college, movies, TV shows. Make a list of all the things that have ever influenced you. And every single one of them will be infused with anti-Christian, anti-God, pro-Luciferian, pro-Satanism, pro-humanist. Because remember, just in case anybody doesn't know, Luciferianism, Satanism, the occult, it's not worshiping the deity of the devil, although that is included. But they don't worship the devil as if the devil is God. They worship themselves as if they are God. So just because it doesn't say Hail Satan in a movie doesn't mean it's not Luciferian or occult or Satanism. But if a piece of media, a movie, a class, your college, even just secular culture, even just your friends around you, if what they're telling you is that you are like God, your logic is ultimate, you have control over the world around you, you are in control even of yourself, you are all powerful. If that's the message you receive from anything, that's inherently Luciferian. So I understand why literally anybody, I said way before we had this revival of Christianity in recent years, I used to say this all the time. I say, I have no idea how somebody comes to Christianity. I grew up with it. I was born into it. And against all odds, stuck around, didn't get sucked out of it like so many do. But knowing that, if I'm being very honest, I don't say this anymore, but I used to, just considering the culture, considering everything, I was just totally baffled how anybody would come to the Christian message and be like, okay, yes, this is for me. Again, don't hear me wrong. I love it. I live it. It's who I am. It's who God, thankfully, has preserved me to be. But just the influences of everything make it seem like such an insurmountable decision to make. And that's why every time somebody does give their life to Christ, it is just a mind-blowing celebration in heaven. It's so illogical to me when somebody can make it past all the propaganda, make it past all the Luciferianism, make it past all the peer pressure, and make the decision and say, yes, I give my heart to Christ. I am in awe. I am like in holy awe of when that happens, because there's so much in the world that went into keeping that person from giving their life to Christ for years and years and maybe even decades and decades, that for them to finally cross that hump can only be attributed to God. And so Jarrett, that's another part of it, just so you understand. Again, I don't know what Christian influence you have. I don't know what you know about Christianity. I don't know who told you. I don't know. So excuse me if I'm telling you something you already know. But it is explicitly understood for every one of us that our faith does not come from us. Okay? Every time somebody puts their faith in Christ, it is a supernatural event. It is beyond logic. It is beyond comprehension, which is understandable because it's so hard to imagine somebody breaking through all the propaganda. But our salvation does not come from us. We're not saved because of what we do. Any faith we actually have doesn't come from us. God does it for us. Any understanding that we have of the Bible or the things of God isn't generated by our own minds. It is given to us and through us to edify everyone else. It's not just for our own benefit. And is that level of surrender and that level of mystery is very difficult for someone trying to classical physics themselves into understanding the quantum realm. But the fact you're even asking the question is the big deal, Jarrett. The fact you're even trying. the fact you're even here is evidence to me that God's doing something with you, that you're right in his hand. I'm confident. I have faith. The fact you're even here, the fact you're even asking the questions, you don't need to wonder if God is involved in your life. I'm just telling you that he is. You wouldn't be here if not. Let's see here. Basil, I believe in a higher power who created everything. I don't believe in Jesus or the Bible. Yeah, that's classic. That's a classic first step. I get it. Jesus really is the ultimate mystery. You'll get there. And it won't be because of you. How is Jesus God's only begotten son? I thought we are all God's children. Yeah, that's kind of a long, we can do a long, complicated theological discussion on that. But both are true. You'll find this a lot in the Bible. You'll find this a lot in Christianity. Again, our logic brain, our human logic, is more mathematical, meaning 1 + 1 = 2, obviously. There is only one thing that can exist in truth. But again, that's classic physics. That's up here. This is Einstein physics, relativity. When you go to the quantum realm, none of that matters. None of the math works. The electron is here and it's there. It's a particle, it's a wave. Both things are true. And you'll find this a lot in seeking out the mysteries of God. This is what befuddles the material mind. And this is why I said this a lot last episode. You can't logic yourself into salvation. It just doesn't work. And I could see how somebody would be like, well, then what the heck? Then what's even the point? So you're saying it's fake, can't be proven, whatever. I don't want it if it's not logical. I know. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying I understand you. I'm saying I know this is the case. But I'm telling you, just because you don't like it doesn't mean it's not there. Just because you don't like particle wave duality, just because you don't like that you can never actually know where an electron is at any one point, that it exists in a field of probability. Man, I really hope you know some stuff about quantum physics, because these are some good metaphors for somebody who knows a little bit of who knows a little bit about quantum physics, okay? You go down to the quantum level, as in the spiritual level, it's hard to pin things down. Math doesn't work. You don't know where things are. It's fields of probability. Two things can be true at once. These are the mystery realms, okay? Quantum realm, sciencey mystery realm, spiritual realm, mystery realm. So yes, Jesus is God's only begotten son, and we are also God's children. That's just an issue of language, okay? Don't let language get in your way. If you think that's confusing, try the Trinity. God is God the Father, God is God the Son, Jesus, and God is God the Holy Spirit. Three separate things, although they're one. They're not actually separate. They're one thing, but there's three things. If that's not quantum physics for you, I don't know what is. Get ready. Hold on to your butts, because it doesn't get any more logical. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing. Says, because I can't blindly believe in a story that Jesus lived in a perfect life without sin, God's only begotten son, even though we're all children of God. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you, man. I get you. You don't, I would, I love that word blindly believe. Not to pick on you, Jarrett. Please hear me. I love you. I really do love you. I'm really grateful that you're asking these questions and that I get to talk about it. I'm already an hour and a half over on this podcast because of you and how much fun I'm having. That word blindly is really funny. That is like the classic. And I'm going to keep making fun of atheists, okay? I'm not saying that Jarrett's an atheist. He says he believes in God. But I'm just saying, in the characters in my mind, the fedora wearing atheist in middle school, I can't blindly believe. Bro, we are all blind. Again, this faith that you have in your perceptions, not just your physical sight, your hearing, but the limitations of your mind, of all of our minds. There's a humility that comes along with this too. And if you don't like the word humility, you'll have to get to like it, not just to be a Christian, but just to be a human. You know who the best scientists are? Forget about Christianity for a second. The best scientists, the scientists who have done more discovery to make the life we live in now, they're the most humble ones. They're the ones that say, I don't know. I mean, I figured this one thing out, but that's it. I don't know. I can't extrapolate that out. Richard Feynman. I mean, Einstein, obviously. These are all guys who made a habit of saying, I really don't know anything. And so I'm just going to keep looking. We are all there. The humility tells us that we are all blind and we need to accept the fact that we are blind. And notice how it's the Luciferian theology that is the one that is trying to convince us that we know everything, we see everything, that our logic is perfect, that we are like a god. But I'm not even telling you to blindly believe in everything. That's not even what I'm saying. I'm just saying you are blind. I am blind. We are all blind. That is why it's such a miracle when God steps into our life and we begin to understand things that we couldn't see. I mean, even just growing older. I mean, again, let's just get to normal talk for a second. I'm in my 30s. I look back to even my mid 20s. I go, oh my gosh, I was so stupid. I didn't know anything. I thought I knew everything. I was doing this podcast in 2025. Or I'm sorry, when I was 25. I had been doing this podcast for years. I thought I was pretty smart. Other people thought I was pretty smart. I look back at myself now. I was so blind. But that's just how being a human is. Time goes on. The way we see the world, not just how we conceive of the world, but the way we perceive the world is revealed to us layer by layer. And every time another layer of that onion gets peeled, every time another layer of the veil gets pulled off of our eyes, either our physical eyes or our spiritual eyes or whatever, we realize just how blind we were, how blind we always were. It's actually it's a couple good Bible stories in there about blindness and what God does about it. If you're looking for a place to read that maybe you can understand. And I'm only babbling so much because when I look back at the process of me coming to understanding of all sorts of things, whatever, God, Christianity, myself, society, the news, anything. The more we interact with it, when that veil finally comes off, and I credit God with peeling that veil off or that layer off. Every time one of those veils drops, it's almost like everything is new. Everything is different. We see everything in a way that was hidden to us before. Even back when we thought we knew everything, we saw everything and we understood everything. One of these veils comes off and you're like, oh my God, you're almost living in an entirely new reality. Some are bigger than others. But the point is that you cannot do it. Only God can do it. But I'll tell you what, from experience, God does it more often when we subject ourselves to new information, not repeating the same information that we've had in the past. Having some crazy googly-eyed podcaster ramble an extra hour and a half based on your questions. Staying away from media that is reinforcing the Luciferian, boring, lame theology that the whole world wants to convince you of. Forget that. You want to be punk rock. Start looking at other stuff. You think you're like so cool, enlightened, and smart. Again, Jarrett, not picking on you, talking to everybody here. You think you're so smart and cool and seeing the world for what it is and practical and everything. Why do you feel that way? You feel that way because you agree with everybody around you. Because you're seeing what they're seeing. You're thinking what they're thinking. You're being reinforced day by day by day by day. And you think you're right because everybody else thinks they're right and they think the same thing as you. Everybody thinks you're cool because you can both bash the Bible together. You can both say, oh, Christianity is so lame. I know, dude. Can't believe these nerds believe in this illogical, eternal God. Jesus died, okay? That's not cool. I want to worship something that didn't die. Get it? I think you get it. I think people are starting to get it. All right. I'm just gonna make it down to the chat here. Make sure I didn't scare Jared away. Thank you, Basil. I didn't mean to be the troll in your comments, but here I am doing the best I can. You're not a troll. You're not a troll, Jared. I mean, maybe you were a troll. I don't know. Basil, I'm not an atheist. I know that. No hate, not trying to throw you off course. I believe a higher power who created this life. I'm going to listen to this live on replay until I understand. Max, I quit my career because they tried forcing a mask. Yeah, see, there you go. There you go, you rebel. Don't wear a mask. Yeah, Jared, just see, I don't think, I mean, maybe you were a troll. I don't know. I didn't take it as that. You're not being a pain. Honestly, all this stuff is stuff I just want a reason to say anyways. This is the kind of stuff I think about 24/7 and doesn't always come up. Sometimes, am I weird? This might be weird. You know how like you're in the shower or something and you finally think of like, oh, something I could have said in that argument or something, an argument I had. You're laying in bed and you go, oh, I should have said this. I could have won the argument or whatever. Similar to that, although it's not an argument, like sometimes I'll imagine when I'm just staring off, I'll like simulate maybe someone like Jarrett. And I'll like have a brain conversation with someone like Jarrett. And maybe I run these simulations. Maybe I just run them for me, like to help me think about these things. Not even that I'm like preparing. I'm not trying to talk anybody in to Christianity, but I think I simulate those conversations because they're good questions. Like a lot of people feel this way, Jarrett. I would say most people probably feel like you do. There's a lot of people. And in the same way that when someone shares maybe a problem or a sin that they're having, and one of the most surprising things to hear when you're confessing something bad about yourself that you don't want to confess, or somebody's telling me that, uh, one of the funniest things that people discover is that it's not a big deal. Like, we're not special for having these thoughts. You're special, Jarrett. Of course. I love you. God loves you. No, but we're not special. These are all the same. These are all the same struggles that human beings have been having forever. Like literally, Jarrett, and I mean this in a good way. Please hear me correct. Like your problem with the story of Jesus is the same problem that a Roman from the year 34 AD had. You are sharing, you are re-experiencing an inner argument, an inner toil that a guy living 2,000 years ago had with the same story. I don't think the bigness of this really occurs to anybody. It doesn't really occur to me until I just say it right now. Any problem that any of us, even if you're a Christian, maybe if you've been a Christian your whole life, but there's something that you're just kind of like, I don't know about, I mean, whatever. Yeah, who knows? But, I love Jesus, but who knows? I don't know. These are not new, cool, modern thoughts. You are having an experience that millions, maybe billions of human beings have also had. If there's any repeating story, human history is filled with repeating stories, right? That's what they say. History is whatever. It doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. Being a human, one human lifespan is just to repeat the same cycle that's been going on for thousands of years. And that includes, the normal stuff. Am I the only sentient one? Is everybody else NPCs? If I see green, is it the same green that another human sees when they look at green? What if they see red, but they just call it green because it was called green when they first saw it? Is this whole existence like a Truman Show thing? All these things. They're kind of the trippy, fun thoughts that we have, and they seem ultra modern because we had The Matrix come out in 1999. But they're not modern. Everything you're experiencing, every question you have, every obstacle you bump up against, every certainty that your logic is leading you to have, that someday turns out to be wrong and you learn something new, it's not special. I mean that in a good way. Your suffering, your unknowing, your struggles, my doubts, your doubts. It's just part of the thing. And so you can join Jarrett et al. You can join in the long history of human beings trying to figure it out, using their own logic. And in my belief, it's just a matter of time before God snaps you out of it. You don't need to accomplish anything. You don't need to convince yourself of the Bible or the certainty of Jesus. Theologians for at least hundreds of years, probably thousands, I've talked about it forever. It's not in your hands. And the fact that anybody has stuck around to hear me rant for 3.5 hours about this, you better bend the knee and start praying to Jesus, because if he brought you through this, he can bring you through anything, okay? Any trial, any tribulation, any unknown that you might be having in your life. If you stuck around for this whole thing, that means God is with you, my friend. Footprints on the beach. All right. Well, that's just about that, I think. I was going through a back catalog of emails from when I was out because my foot, I missed that episode a couple weeks ago. I don't know if Gons brought it to the show, but we did have a prayer request come into the email. The prayer request, producers. So yeah, you guys know how this goes. If you're here, if you can hear in my voice, you're now challenged to become a producer. Here you go.
Producers, assemble!
Producers assemble. That's right. Get ready. Everybody pray for this person, this prayer request. Write it down. Pray later about it. This is from, let me make sure it's not supposed to be anonymous. Let me read it first. I need some prayers, folks. I know Jesus said, love your neighbor as yourself, but if I'm being honest, I've really struggled with that when it comes to my current neighbors. I'm asking for clarity, either to accept what I can't control or to take the right responsible steps forward, and that God would reveal his truth to me. Thanks. That was from Sir Darren. I don't know if God's caught this. Sorry, Sir Darren, it took a couple of weeks to get it up here, but I just found it today. Yeah, Sir Darren, I know Jesus said, love your neighbor as yourself, but if I'm being honest, I've really struggled with that when it comes to my current neighbors. Yeah, I hear you, buddy. I'm asking for clarity, either to accept what I can't control or take the right responsible steps forward, and that God would reveal his truth to me. Amen. Well, we'll be praying for you, Sir Darren. Hopefully, well, I don't know, hopefully this issue resolved itself. But if it is ongoing, I'm praying that the Lord come and visit you, communicate to you, give you the instincts, the words, align Sir Darren's emotions with how Jesus feels about the situation. And then, yes, given the courage to act or the courage to not act. Sometimes it takes courage not to befuddle ourselves with doing things we regret. That is tough. I don't know if Sir Darren's talking about neighbors, like actual neighbor next door, or neighbor as in just somebody in his community. But yes, praying for you, Sir Darren, and that whole situation, and praying for the neighbors too. That whatever they got going on, hopefully they straighten it out. Monica texted, says, great show, Basil. I hope your ankle feels better soon. Have you tried magnesium oil or topical DMSO to accelerate the healing? Thank you for the time you spend with the body of believers. Love you, buddy. Thank you, Monica. No, I don't know what DMSO is. I don't do magnesium oil. I do take magnesium as a supplement. DMSO. Let's find out. Let's do a quick little searchy poo. Quick little searchy poo poo. DMSO. What is? What is you, DMSO? Okay, WebMD, uses and risks. Dimethyl sulfoxide is a byproduct of paper making. Okay. FDA has approved DMSO as a prescription medication for treating symptoms of painful bladder syndrome. It's also under the medical supervision to treat several other conditions, easily absorbed by the skin, available without a prescription. Headache, rheumatoid arthritis, eye problems, scars, scleroderma. All right. Sounds interesting. I'll look into it. You know, the one thing, this is weird that WebMD started out this way, but it does say DMSO has been used as an industrial solvent since the mid 1800s. From about the mid 20th century, researchers have explored its use as an anti-inflammatory agent. Ah, I see. Anti-inflammatory. Yeah, you know, the weird thing, I'll look into this. This quite possibly could help. The weird thing about my foot, now it's not my ankle. Now that the pain, the general pain has sort of subsided, it's a little bit more like pinpointed where it is. It's in my toe joint. And so we think what it is turf toe, which is a damage to the ligament in the toe joint. But the swelling was never very bad. It never swelled, really. It didn't bruise. So it's just very strange. But thank you for the advice there, Monica. Magnesium oil is a must, she says. And just a reminder to everybody, it is value for value. This show, Canary Cry News Talk, everything we do is value for value. We don't take any money from corporations, commies, cartels, no advertisements, no sitting through ads, no codes. Although who knows, maybe we should. But it is value for value. It's a spiritual practice, not involving ourselves with the corporate system of mammon that quite literally encourages us to harvest as much attention and time of yours as possible, not to mention trust, bundle it up, and then sell it to advertisers because they want access to you. And they get that access to you through me or through Gans. And so there's a consent there. They're seeking consent from the one who owns the attention. In that case, right now, it's me, to commoditize the most precious thing you have. That's your time, your consciousness, and your trust. So we don't do that. We're on value for value. We believe it's a biblical concept, but it's at least a concept that strangely appears in Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged. Imagine my shock when I read the phrase value for value in Atlas Shrugged. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's very simple. We're going to keep trying to create as much value as possible, as often as we can. If anything we do brings value to you, if this episode, if my ramblings have any value to you, you're invited to put some value back in, not because it's some sort of transaction and you owe me or owe us, but because there's an understanding that we all should have that the system has tried to convince us of otherwise for a very long time, advertising being an example of that. They're trying to convince us that we, A, don't have any power over what exists and doesn't exist, or two, shouldn't want the power to decide what exists and doesn't exist, because they want to give the power to the corporations, the institutions, the ones who pay money to advertise. And so if any of this brought any value to your life, we only can keep doing this if people put value back in. It's very simple. Your time, your talent, your treasure, whatever it is, doesn't matter. If you don't got money, don't got to be money. Help us out with stuff. Send us an email. If you're an artist, you want to make some art or music or jingles, you can upload that to canarycry.art. Man, the artists have had a hard time past couple of years because of AI. But God bless you. We're still here to feature real artists. Or if you got a couple bucks and the show is worth to you, keeping it going for one more episode, just go to canarycry.support. Canarycry.support. You can support us there. I think that's it. I'm going to go ahead. Oh, I apologize. We just had a caller come into the back room. It is Sir James. I love you, Sir James. I want to talk to you, Sir James. My recorder says 3 hours and 47 minutes. I gotta go. I gotta land this plane. But Sir James, I really want to hear from you. Please call in next Thursday or send me an email. Send an email if there's something you want immediate response to. Email us at canarycryradio@gmail.com. I would love to talk to you, but I am fully fried. So I'll make sure we can get you on early next episode if you are available. But before we land the plane, I'm going to play this song, Feeding the Ducks. Isn't that better? That's much better. Okay, we need a sweet little groove before we get out of here. We'll be back with News Talk on Monday. I think that's it. Yeah, my brain is fried. Okay, I'm going to get out of here. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for listening to this episode of Canary Cry Clubhouse. Make sure to tune in next time. But until then, think outside the cage.